OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, you're very welcome along. It's Thursday morning, a nice short week for you out there. It's OTB AM. It's Ger and Eoin here with you all the way through until 10. If you want to get involved in any of the conversations we're having, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can always leave a comment on the YouTube stream. You can follow us at Off The Ball AM on Twitter as well. A little bit later on, we'll get into the details on last night's football, which was a pretty classic night of Arsenal action where they go to Stamford Bridge and they win 4-2. With one of those performances that makes you think, this team's really good. They could do anything. As it stands, they're still fifth from the table, but they have opened up a bit of daylight between themselves and Manchester United. Newcastle beat Crystal Palace to get over the 40 points mark, so prepare yourself for the incredible transfer activity that Saudi Arabia will be funding for Newcastle in the summer. Everton scored a 94th minute equaliser against Leicester City to give themselves a point and a little bit of breathing space against Burnley. But the big story of the night, of course, was Riyad Mahrez settling the nerves for Manchester City as they ended up beating Brighton 3-0, but it was 0-0 at half time. Mahrez scores a classic counter-attacking goal for Manchester City. Well done, Brighton, leaving yourselves open to the counter-attack at the Etihad. Clever work, lads. Anyway, they were beaten 3-0 and Manchester City are top of the table. So that was the main overnight headlines from the world of sport. We'll get into that a little bit later on. Here's what's coming up on the show between now and 10 o'clock. A really busy show and varied stuff for you. We're going to talk rugby, particularly some of the rule changes, the standing of the URC in South Africa and more. We've got Nicolas Roche at 8:10 in studio. He's got a new role where he's going to be in charge of the professional Irish cycling teams who represent Ireland on the international stage. Sports pages at 8:30, sports news at 8:40. Colm Boyle is going to preview Mayo and Galway, obviously this weekend at 8:50. Will Fleury is going to join us in studio. He's keeping his UFC dream alive. And then we'll hear from Mark Lawrenson after an absolute pummeling for Manchester United. If you're a Man United fan, you're still licking your wounds this morning, you've got thoughts that you'd like to share with us, then give us your reflected thoughts. And if you're a Liverpool fan and you still want to gloat, well, then we've got the forum for you here. So as I said, you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. You can tweet us using the hashtag OTBAM, or you can get us on any of the other platforms, the multitude of platforms that we are. But at 7:32, I'm delighted to say Stephen Kisbey-Green, SKG, is with us this morning. Good morning to you, Stephen. How are you?
Morning, Jigger. Thanks, off.
One of the things that's happened that we see in the papers this morning is that the URC are now talking about copying the trial that's ongoing in the Southern Hemisphere when it comes to the 20-minute red card rule. And this is coming, it seems like, in a very separate conversation from we need to continually enforce the rulings and make sure that we change people's behaviour when it comes to tackle height and red card. And I'm like, these conversations don't seem to be particularly joined up here. So first off, and this does seem like it's going to happen, does it?
It unfortunately does look like they're going to at least trial it again. It's been working in, this isn't working, it's been trialled in Super Rugby at the moment, and nobody seems to be talking about it over there as being a huge failure, which is strange because it does definitely look like a failure from the outside. But yeah, the World Rugby are definitely looking at trialling it on the Northern Hemisphere and actually in the international window this summer as well.
It's going to happen in the URC. If it happens in the URC, it's going to have to happen for the whole season, right?
Yeah, it'll be the full thing, and it could even potentially spill over into the Champions Cup, depending on how it works in the URC, because it would be weird if it went URC and then didn't go Champions Cup, because then you got Leinster and Ulster and Connacht and Munster all playing one set of rules in one competition at the same time as playing a completely different set of rules. So it'll spill over. The trial looks like it's going to be more realistic and more widespread as the thing goes on.
What's the push behind this? Why are they doing this?
I think the idea is there's the fan backlash of red cards ruin games. It's the idea that once a team goes down to 14 men, or 14 men or 14 women or whatever it is, that the teams themselves can't compete, so it becomes a bit of a farce. And just look at the Italian game in the Six Nations. It wasn't the best of spectacles, but again, you also look at the opposition. So I think that's where it's coming from. It wants to try and keep the competitive nature of matches, especially when teams go down to 14 men. But that kind of rings a bit hollow if you look at what happened this past weekend in the Champions Cup. I mean, there was 5 red cards throughout the entire Champions Cup, which is a fairly ill-disciplined weekend, let's be honest. But of those 5, only one of the matches were actually detrimentally affected by the red card. Sale and Bristol was probably one of the best matches of the weekend, and Sale had 14 men for 55 minutes. So the idea that red cards ruin matches is actually just ridiculous.
Well, what's the point of the red card?
It's supposed to be to try and force, as far as I can understand, it's supposed to be to try and force teams or players to reassess how they do things and actually punish them for doing bad things. So, for example, right now, as you alluded to, the idea is we want to protect players' safety, and especially in light of a lot of the early onset dementia cases coming on and the issues with concussion, etc., etc. The idea at the moment is to punish people for high tackles. But now, if you're going to effectively reward a team to go back to 15 men after 20 minutes, sure, the player themselves can't come back on, but the team is not punished. The team is not putting any pressure on that player to do better. It's weird, and it doesn't force coaches to instill a lower tackle height in the training sessions. It doesn't do anything really to try and, as you say, it goes against what World Rugby claimed to want to do with the tackle height.
Okay, so there's a story in the back of the Irish Independent today, and I suspect it's in some of the other papers as well. The head of the URC, their head of match officials, is a South African. His name is Tappe, T-A-P-P-E, Henning?
Yeah, Tappe Henning, yeah.
Tappe Henning, right. So he took the role on last December, and he says that they are going to look into the 20-minute red card. It is still on the agenda. He's also hopeful of having neutral TMOs, which would be a good step forward for the competition. Just, not suggesting anything untoward is happening, but, it's always good to be above suspicion. And he's saying they're open to this idea. But look, in fairness, it's a nuanced answer. The other side of it is that if you want to change player behaviour around headshots and things, the punishment must fit the crime. How do you change behaviour with soft decisions? That's the question, right? Because we're seeing too many soft decisions still where there is head-on-head contact, and instead of just going, I don't really care about the mitigation, or I don't really care about the intent, or I don't really care about the damage. It's like, that's head-on-head. There's a tiny percentage risk that you took that's too much risk because it's leading to early onset dementia. These things are linked. So you lower your head height or you get a red card. And it's automatic red card, as opposed to this, we're all sitting looking at the video going, it's head-on-head contact, that's a red card. It's not a red card. No, it is a red card. It's like, no, all head-on-head contact is a red card, irrespective of whether or not it's accidental. You just do that, and then maybe the behaviour changes, because nothing has changed the behaviour so far.
True, but as Andy Dunn actually was on the show last night, he alluded to, it's not so much a lack of willingness from the players per se. It's more like these things that can often happen accidentally. Like, look at Jamison Gibson Park's yellow card against Connacht, where I personally think it should have been a red card. I don't agree with the idea that he fell into him, because that's a bit of a rubbish answer. But at the same time, it was being tackled already, and Gibson Park didn't lunge towards the player with the shoulder, so it wasn't a deliberate head-on-head.
No.
So I agree, it should have been a red card, but at the same time, it's not so much a behavioural thing, it's more of an accidental thing, and that's what Andy Dunn was getting on about. It's not like the tip tackle where it's a conscious decision to tip the player and drive them into the ground. These things can happen on the rugby field, and a lot of the time they are rugby incidents. But at the same time, if you're claiming that you want to protect players right now and in the future, if there is an accidental head contact, you kind of have to give some form of punishment for it. Yeah,
I think that actually just the red card would eventually have an impact. Where the other thing is the 20-minute red card, and it's coming through here on the comments already. The 20-minute red card is absolutely ridiculous. Everybody I speak to in real life, in real day-to-day life, agrees. Says Jessica, and Fergus says if red cards ruin matches, maybe players should stop doing things that result in red cards. I mean, they haven't fixed the loophole. They haven't fixed the rules that caused the incident in the Italy game, and that is continuously happening. It's like the people who are in charge of rugby cannot get out of their own way. Too many Billy Big Bollocks is the issue here, that they just can't have a conversation and go, what's going to make the sport better? This is going to make the sport better, and if there's a problem with it, we'll fix it. But when the problem emerges, it's like, can't fix that now. We made our decision. That's our bad. We've got to lie in it.
I don't actually think, though, that there was an issue with that rule that's going down to 13 men with Italy.
There is. You're punishing two people for the same incident. You can't do that.
No, but you're not.
You are. You actually, what happened was two people ended up not playing for the same team because one player got red carded. That's what happened.
Yeah, because the team...
You're qualifying it now.
No, I'm explaining why I don't think it's why I don't think it's an issue. The incident in that case was a bit of an overstepping of the well, not overstepping. It was following the laws exactly.
Exactly.
But
the law is bullshit.
No, because it's not though. Because you want to ensure that a team is
not going to cheat.
The team's not going to cheat, but also you want to ensure that scrums are competitive but also safe. So if you can't field a full front row, and there's no specified front row player that can fill in for that role, and safely. And I don't know if you've been in the front row, but I know it's a
long time ago. Yes, as an under 14. So I would say it's not quite the same as the front rows you were in. But go on.
No, it's madness. But I played all three in high school. I didn't play pro, but yeah, played all three positions in high school. And unless you're trained how to do it in each individual position.
Sure, it's very risky.
It's very risky. Now, if say for example you are.
Can I just make the point? I understand the point you're going to make. But if a team has had a player red carded for an incident, right?
Yeah.
Then in that instance, they're already being punished, and so it's not like they've had the red card on purpose to go to uncontested scrums. It's an unintended consequence. And so double punishment in all sports has eventually, even football, like the slowest, stupidest rule makers in the history of all sports, finally caught up with the idea that a red card and a penalty, do we do both at the same time? Oh no, hang on a second, that's ruining the game.
But then at the same time, why do we give red cards or yellow cards at the same time we give penalty tries?
Now you almost never see that. If you think about it, most teams are kind of glad that the try got scored because it prevents the red or the yellow card. You very rarely see the double punishment of the yellow and the try being scored. Occasionally you do.
In the Northern Hemisphere. In Southern Hemisphere, it's very often given where...
What can I say? We're just better up here, Stephen.
It makes me really irritated. There's two separate rules for the Northern and Southern Hemisphere.
Okay. We got sidetracked there. So what else were we going to talk about?
Well, yeah. So
Leinster have been they're sending their squad to South Africa for their mini tour. How is this going down in South Africa? How are they being perceived?
Well, yeah. Do you know who's in the squad? Do you want me to read through the list?
Just in case anybody's missed this, maybe the list of players who aren't in the squad would have been. Go on, yeah.
I think that list is too long. So we got Ed Byrne, Peter Dooley, Michael Milne, Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher, John McKee, James Tracy, Vak Abdaladze, Michael Alatoa, Thomas Clarkson, Brian Deeney, Jack Dunn, Josh Murphy, Martin Mooney, Rhys Ruddock, who's captain, Sean O'Brien, Scott Penny, Max Deegan, Alex Soroka, Cormac Foley, Nick McCarthy, Harry Byrne, David Hawkshaw, Tommy O'Brien, Rob Russell, Kieran Frawley, Rory O'Loughlin, Jamie Osborne, Adam Byrne, Chris Cosgrove, and Max O'Reilly. And the immediate thing that stands out to me there is it is basically a bunch of children. With a few Irish internationals thrown in.
Pretty hairy children who you wouldn't want to meet down a dark alley. But
definitely. No. I wouldn't want to come up against any of them. But when you compare the squad that's available to Leinster, this is arguably comparable to the academy team that Munster put out against the Wasps, and that was out of absolute desperation.
I do see 2/3 of the best front row in the world there. Trademark various Irish pundits in the aftermath of the first game of the Six Nations.
Yeah. So if you look at it, you got Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher, Rhys Ruddock, and the two Burns. There is quite a few. There's a few players there that you'd imagine would be considered top class, but it's not the strongest side by any means. I mean, you just look at the players that aren't there. You got no Sexton, no Henshaw, no Ringrose, no Furlong, no Healy,
Flair, yeah,
no Van der Flair, no. Actually, none of the Irish back row, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a weakened team, and I'm sure the South African sides are licking their chops. They're delighted about this, right?
The sides themselves are, but the fans are not happy. They don't think that they. I'm going to preface this by saying it's not my feelings. It's not. I completely disagree with them, and it's also not the feelings of the majority of South African fans. But it's a very loud minority that think that Leinster are disrespecting both South Africa. Well, maybe not South Africa as a whole, but the South African team that they're facing, and the URC as a competition by sending the side to South Africa, because they. It seemed like either they think that they can win with this second string side, which is I think we can all agree it's a largely second string side. Either they think they can beat the best team in South Africa with this second string side, or they literally don't care about these two games. They're happy to lose them, and they are focusing only on the Champions Cup, and that's it. Now, that's the belief system of the minority of South African fans, but the loud minority.
It's very, very unlike the South African rugby fans to take offence at almost nothing, is it?
I mean, it's. all fans
out of character.
All fans have their quirks.
And what happens now if Leinster go down with this team and beat your teams?
Highly possible, but not likely. If that makes any sense. The Sharks are the only team so far in South Africa on South African soil that have lost a match. And they surprisingly, I think it was Edinburgh that they lost to, which was a big shock. I would have expected the Lions to have lost to Munster, to be honest. And that was actually a fairly well stocked Munster side as well. It wasn't full strength, but it was 80 to 90% there. So it's possible, but I don't think it's going to happen. The Sharks. I've learned from their mistakes against Edinburgh, and actually they've learned from all their mistakes recently, really. And the Stormers are actually on a roll, so I don't see it happening. But you can understand why Leinster have sent this side, because it makes sense to prioritise a knockout game as opposed to a league game. They are 10 points clear of their closest competitor on the URC.
Yeah. So
they can't afford to lose these matches, and I do think that they are going to lose these matches, whether it be with bonus points or not. I don't know.
Spread is 3 points. That's not a massive spread for people to be getting upset about. But look, I guess it does serve to offer an opportunity to speak about how the competition has been perceived by South African rugby fans and how welcome it's been, because it's been such a slow start. It's been in the works for such a long period of time. COVID interrupted. Teams got trapped down there. It was generally considered to have been
I take offence to trapped down there.
A bit of a disaster. couldn't get out.
I mean, there are worse places in the world than to be stranded in Cape Town.
It's true. They weren't allowed to leave their hotels, were they?
You could still see sun. When was the last time you saw sun in Dublin?
This morning. It's a bright sunny day as I cycled across the Liffey.
I was
miserable
when I did.
So how has the tournament been perceived? Is it are South African rugby fans on board with this tournament?
It's mixed results, to be honest. The URC is the biggest competition South Africa can take part in at the moment, because obviously it replaced Super Rugby, and at the moment and Super Rugby and the Currie Cup were the only two competitions South African teams were involved in. And South Africa, historically, the biggest competition should be the Currie Cup, because it's the oldest professional rugby. Well, no, not professional. It's the oldest competitive rugby tournament in the world. That hasn't really changed too much. And it's got so much history behind it in South Africa. However, with the sort of development of the Pro 12, Pro 14, Super Rugby, etc. Super 12, Super 14, and then on Super Rugby, it kind of took a back burner, and the international window kind of took over. So a lot of the time, the Currie Cup was for the second string teams and development squads.
Yeah.
So that's why now that's where it's become, where it's no longer that prestige that it used to have. So a lot of fans are like, okay, cool, we want to be competitive in the Currie Cup, but we don't really care. That's for like the Griquas and the Eastern Province and the Pumas and them. The big franchises, they'll focus on the international tournaments like URC or Super Rugby. And it started off not going too well, because obviously South African fans, they want what they're used to. They're used to playing the New Zealand teams. They're used to losing to the New Zealand teams, and they're happy enough to lose to the New Zealand teams as long as they can compete against what they see as the best teams in club rugby, which a lot of South Africans still think are in New Zealand. They don't necessarily think that the English, the Premiership, which a lot of people over here think is Premiership, is the best club competition in the world. top 14 fans think the French rugby is the best in the world. It's like South Africans think that the best club competitions is in New Zealand. They want to play against them, but they also just want to see South African rugby play internationally as well. So it's not like they don't like the URC.
It's all they've got.
It's all they've got, and the issue is they haven't had live rugby that they've been able to go to stadiums for like the past 2.5 years.
Okay, and I think next year is really when we can judge exactly how well or otherwise this experiment of the South African teams moving to Europe has worked, because the South African teams, on the basis of this year's URC, will qualify for the Heineken Champions Cup next year. And as it stands, 3 of the South African provinces would be, it's not finished yet, but 3 of the teams would be qualified for next year's Champions Cup. I suspect that would change the tenor of things.
Yeah, I think they do want to. I mean, to be able to play the likes of a top tier Toulouse team with Intermac and Dupont and all of them in it would be amazing for the lot of South African fans. And then just the idea of winning more silverware is just any potential to win silverware South African fans will want. And also the fact that it's now a third competition that South African teams will be playing for is something that they've never had before. So it's new, it's nuanced, it's interesting. So that automatically will give South African fans something to play for or something to cheer for. And then the players themselves, even though South African squads are not actually as bloated as Northern Hemisphere squads are, because financially they just aren't. They don't have the funds to pay their best players, so a lot of them get shipped overseas.
Is there a possibility that the increased profile of the Champions Cup might lead to more revenue and therefore allow for some more of those best South African players to stay, or is that pie in the sky?
Completely pie in the sky, purely based on the fact that the South African rand is weak. You cannot, you can't really argue that any increased revenue will make no difference whatsoever, because the South African franchise will only be paying in rands, and you can't compete with the pound and the euro, or even and the Japanese leagues at the moment, which a lot of South African rugby players are going to, largely because it's actually slightly softer. It's not like, I'm not saying it's soft, but it's slightly softer than Europe or South Africa. A lot of South African fans, or a lot of South African players, like to take that bit of a sort of 6 months or a 3-month palate cleanser in Japan to get them. It's sort of like an off season, but it's not really an off season, so they keep fit, but they don't get the heavy hits that they would get every week in the URC or the Champions Cup or South Africa or whatever.
DLN has gone to Japan, we think. Is that the general consensus in South Africa?
That's the story, yeah. It's looking likely that he's going to Japan.
And would he go for a couple of seasons, or would it be like so when you say it's just a couple of months, what like?
So on rare occasions, South Africans stay there like quite permanently, like Franco Mostert and Clark Smith. They're both are sticking around for quite a while, but for the vast majority of them go for about a 3 or 4 month stint. Lucanio he's there for 6 months, and then he's back in the Sharks, and which is weird that he kind of left mid-season as well. I found that interesting. And
so, not to individualise it, but for any of the players who go there, what kind of money are they making compared to how much they would make in Europe or?
I don't know the exact figure, because I don't think Japan published those figures exactly, but you can argue it's about twice as much as they would make in South Africa.
Right, okay, and then you can go back and do whatever you want, and so it's hard to disagree with professional sports people who are risking life and limb for making money, but especially
if the red card rule is going to allow them to be hit head high repeatedly.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last thing is I don't know who floated the idea, but the suggestion was that the final for this year's URC could actually be in South Africa, on South African soil, to try and bed the competition in. And I presume this would be very welcome from South African fans.
Yeah. You'd hope. The idea is they want to try and fill stadiums, and they want to try and, as you say, like get South African fans to wedded to this idea. They want to see the best players play in South Africa. Now, Leinster's not doing any favours by not sending their best players to South Africa right now. So, and so far, no Northern Hemisphere team has sent their best team to South Africa yet. They've all sent slightly weakened sides.
Interesting to see how Connacht get on when they have their full team out.
They're leaving 2 or 3 of their players that are not continue on next year.
Yeah.
So, and I would consider those first string players.
Okay, fair enough.
So they're not. Again, they're not like no Sammy Arnold. It's but yeah, it'll be well received if it is on South African soil. It'll be better received if a South African is in the final. Because if it's, say, hypothetically Leinster versus Munster, which is technically possible, if it's Leinster versus Munster, I don't see it getting a massive crowd. Not that South Africans don't want to watch high-quality rugby like that. It's just...
nobody wants to watch teams completely alien match played. It was Perpignan played whoever it was in the European Cup final in Dublin in the mid-noughties, and nobody went to it. It was, I think, 9,000 people at Lansdowne Road or something ridiculous like that.
There is a slight difference, though, that a lot of the European teams have a lot of South Africans in them, like Dallin de Achilles Neyman, Jean Klein, even though he's technically Irish. But yeah, like a lot of South Africa, a lot of the European teams have South Africans in them, so there is something to bring South Africans into those teams. Like they'll want to support Damien de Allende, but again, it's not like all of their players are homegrown and they're all like, come on, that's. There is a bit of tribalism going on there. Like Bulls supporters only support the Bulls. Okay,
and Leinster have been winning friends and influencing fans in South Africa by not sending their best players down and then saying no, we do not want the final in South Africa. That seems like an unfair thing to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Leo Cullen, when his exact words were, "It's a tricky one. Probably for the final piece, you should have you have to earn the right." That would be my opinion. So basically, he wants the top ranked team to be at home, which makes complete sense.
Yeah, that's how they do it in a lot of sports. And maybe just announce at the start of the year the final is going to be here, irrespective of the two teams in it. But like,
it doesn't. I don't think that actually makes sense to have a neutral.
Maybe you could do home and away. We see the two-legged finals making a lot of sense in or two-legged games making a lot of sense in Europe when the two teams of similar standing. All right, Stephen. So. Big fans of Leinster in South Africa and no fan of the 20-minute rule.
Pretty much, yeah.
Stephen Kisbey-Green, thanks very much for that.
Cheers.
It's 7:57 this morning here on OTB AM. If you want to get in touch with us, you can text us 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. It's competition time here on OTB AM. And to celebrate the end of the race season at Punchestown Festival, and with thanks to Close Brothers, we've 2 pairs of tickets to give away for next week's festival, next week, Punchestown. One lucky winner on tomorrow's show will have their tickets upgraded to include lunch for 2 and B&B at the Louis Fitzgerald Hotel with coach transfer to and from the racecourse. So who is this iconic Irish jockey and reigning Tipperary Person of the Year?
You know, not even 12 months ago that I was lucky enough to win a Grand National.
To be with a chance of winning, just tell us who that mystery voice is. To enter, text in your guess to 087 9180 180. You can tweet at OffTheBallAM or comment wherever you're watching. It's all with thanks to Close Brothers. 2 pairs of tickets to give away for next week's Punchestown Festival. Now, at 7:58, Eoin Sheehan is with us. Owen.
How are you?
Very well.
What's the crack?
How are you?
Good, yeah.
Celebrating wildly last night after Arsenal's victory.
Yeah. What a moment. Just when you think you're out.
I mean, what's going on here? You didn't call this.
No, well...
I was just banging on about how prescient you were yesterday, how amazing the prediction of the car crash.
There was a moment where it looked like maybe Timo Werner had stopped Arsenal getting into the top 4, and I was like, all my predictions have come true. I still don't think Arsenal are going to get top 4. I still think Tottenham, even if you look at the table, are in the box seat to get it. But
on goal difference now, but Arsenal, remember, could have been 9 points clear at this point had they won those 3 games, and it wouldn't have even been in conversation. Even if they were like 2 or 3 points clear at this stage, it would have been a relatively forgivable position. But it was just those 3 fixtures after the international break where you thought, right, that's a really good opportunity for them to put a bit of daylight between them before Chelsea and United and Spurs come up. But turns out they can actually win the game against Chelsea. And Manchester United on Saturday, I think that the table can sometimes lie, but I think that what I would tell you is that there's not actually that much of a gap between Arsenal and Manchester United. I think everybody has these kind of delusions of grandeur at Manchester United, and that's why everybody's given out and in a crazed sense over the Liverpool result. But Liverpool pretty much hockeyed Arsenal as well, let's not forget. So these 2 teams are on a pretty similar level. This is not going to be a similar situation for them on Saturday. So I wouldn't be predicting them to win the rest of their games at all, but they're back in it. So even when you're happy, you're sad.
It's kind of like drinking pints, really. Knowing
I can't
that
enjoy this.
Not knowing that you're going to be hungover tomorrow morning,
Yeah,
knowing
it's
that it's
like
going to be a very, very bad hangover.
That great bit between the third and fourth point where everything is great, but you just know that the next one is going to be the one that ruins it.
Exactly. You're constantly on the third pint watching Arsenal. It feels that it's good. It is good, and last night was great. But this morning, the realisation that actually there are maybe more disappointments coming down the line. But look, I think that maybe at the end of the season, if it is a goal difference between Arsenal and Tottenham, and Arsenal finish fifth, I think at the start of the season that would have been an okay outcome at the end. That's where they come into fifth.
Nketiah, the striker that Arsenal needed all along, his first goal in 300 and something days.
Yeah. Maybe. Like the second goal was quite funny, where like he got dispossessed like 3 times in the immediate build up to the goal, and it just happened to fall to his feet again. And it was a poacher's finish. I like how Lacazette ran to him immediately after the ball hit the back of the net and congratulated him, and he was really, really happy with him getting the goal. They just need to make a signing there. I don't think Nketiah is going to be that guy. Like if he's happy to be a bit part player next season, potentially in Europe as well, if it's going to be Europa League or maybe even Conference League, then I think that could be a role for him. But I think Arsenal if they can splash the cash on one player, it's got to be a number 9. Like maybe last night is just the start of his career, and that is the start of the uptick. But I don't think since he's come back to Arsenal, he's shown good glimpses, but not glimpses that this is a fella who can kick you into the top 4.
So Arsenal have 57 points, Spurs have 57 points, Man United have 54 points. Obviously, if United win at the weekend against Arsenal, they would feel like that will give them a glimmer of hope, even though they've a game more played than both Arsenal and Spurs, and they're 3 points behind. So you'd have to say that it's odds against for Manchester United at this stage. Like Spurs' form was so good, and then shocking.
Shocking, yeah.
So it's... You wouldn't pencil in the jet-lagged Harry Kane for the rest of the season. You'd have to assume the jet lag wears off at some point.
Hopefully.
From his perspective. From your perspective.
Well, hopefully not. Brentford is... Brentford smashed Chelsea a couple of weeks ago. That's where Tottenham have to go this weekend. They obviously have that game against Liverpool, and then what could be a showdown against Arsenal. That's kind of all you're hoping for at the moment, even from a neutral perspective, is that in a month's time that third last game of the season is actually a top 4 showdown between Spurs and Arsenal, that they are on similar points, and whoever wins essentially does take top spot. There's a couple of games to play after that, but it's looking like that could be a very, very significant, especially because Spurs have to go to Liverpool, and I do think Arsenal will drop points before that game. So it's hard to know. It does feel like Arteta has a heap of credit in the bank with his players. There was no sense that the dressing room had been lost or anything over the last little while, and it would have been pretty flaky if it was the case, because it was only 3 games. But there was just kind of old failings that kind of were magnified, I felt, over the last couple of weeks, particularly when it came to their potency in front of goal.
Set up nicely for Arsenal 0, Manchester United 2 on Saturday, says Joe.
Yeah, it really is.
It's not, though. There's no way Man United are coming back from that.
But you see, my point is that you don't actually need to come back from it too much to beat Arsenal.
Well, it's just that it's such a ritual humiliation. You know, pants taken down, ass smacked live on TV again.
What was their immediate fixture after the 5-0 to Liverpool last time, I wonder? I can just
look it up there.
I'll do that now.
Talk amongst yourself. Bobby says Chelsea an absolute disgrace last night. I haven't seen a performance like that since the days of Bruce Grobbler, Hans Seeger and John Fashanu. Every goal Arsenal scored was Keystone Cop stuff. Ooh, that's flirting with disaster there, Bobby. But Chelsea have nothing to play for, right? They're going to finish in the top 4. They've just got to keep fit now for the cup final, finish the season with a trophy, top 4. Amazing achievement from Tuchel and the players to get to that point, given the off-field upheaval. 0-0 draw.
I think, I know Manchester United beat Spurs 3-0 after the 5-0 early in the season. I was thinking there was some sort of resurgence immediately after the 5-0. The point here is that Liverpool are an outstanding football team. Tottenham and Arsenal are not outstanding, and that sometimes it's as simple as that the gulf between those two teams in midweek on Tuesday night, it just won't be the same this weekend, and they're very similar teams. The thing that for Arsenal is actually they would prefer maybe if Manchester United were a little bit better but not too much better, where they could sit in deep and counter them like they did to Chelsea last night. But the thing is, Manchester United are just have a level now where actually Arsenal are going to have a decent amount of possession, and accidentally, and it doesn't really suit them at the moment. Like, it suited them for a while, but those 3 games, there's a reason why they lost to 3 teams who weren't 3 dominant teams in the Premier League or 3 teams in the top 4, is because Arsenal had the initiative and they had to take the initiative, and they just looked so hapless when they needed to be in control.
Somebody whose username I can't read out, I don't think, says the attendance at the URC games in South Africa are a joke. I think that one of the problems they have is that they've got these amazing stadiums, and they would be like very full if it was a 10,000 seater capacity, but it's like proper international stadiums, and doesn't work.
No, absolutely.
Which actually is one of the stories. Kate McCabe was in the papers, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, where she doesn't feel like the right thing to do is to switch stadiums just at the moment. And I actually agree with it. I get the move to go to the Aviva, but I think do it at the end of this qualifying campaign, before the next qualifying campaign starts. Use this qualifying campaign. Tala's a fortress. They know exactly what to expect. Don't change things around just yet. If they're going to go to the Aviva in the next campaign, start training in the Aviva, customise yourself to all of the little match day rituals, and make sure that it immediately becomes somewhere where it's a €5 a ticket or it's €1 a ticket and it sells out and away we go. But like in the middle of the campaign, before we've qualified, let's just stick with it.
Yeah, like it's something that they want to do down the line, but even in the build up to the Sweden game, we were chatting to a few of the players, and there was something that I was asking them, and Rúisha Littlejohn was of that opinion as well, that, or maybe it was Denise O'Sullivan actually saying that Tala is a bit of a fortress for them at the moment. That's, it's, if they want to get a result at home, playing in Tala is probably more beneficial to them than playing at the Aviva. It's something that they're used to. The whole place is packed out. It's a pretty good crowd that they get there all the time. So that's where they're at the moment. And mid-campaign, as you say, maybe not the best time competitively to switch, but it's got to be something that they've got penciled in the back of their head for down the line. Like it's got to happen, and this team absolutely can make that happen. And like they could definitely come close to making the Aviva feel full, if not a complete sellout. They can definitely do that in the next couple of campaigns.
Yeah, but let's do that in a pre-planned way where it's like a massive campaign behind it and everybody understands that this is the thing. But in the meantime, let's just make sure we qualify for the tournament. The Gibson Park incident could have been a red card for the ball carrier, as he was the one who initiated contact, not Gibson Park. Leinster have earned the right to field who they want by virtue of their position in the table, says Fergus. Yeah, that's a one-eyed view of the whole situation there, Fergus. Thanks for that. Damien says some red cards are purely accidental. A red card spoils the game for the remaining players and the fans. And Dieter Meyer says, rather than making red card to 20 minutes, get an orange card for the accidental challenges and make that 20-minute rule. I mean, that's a possibility. You could have 3 cards. That'll make things a bit more complicated, but that might make more sense than what it is. But I think anything that's around the head or anything that causes a head injury, like, you just have to be a straight red and no coming back on. No, you can't have a player back on in 20 minutes. Tough luck.
Yeah, it does seem that like people are actually moving towards accepting that at the moment.
They're getting the 20 minutes trial, and they're going to bring it in here.
Yeah, like but as kind of like sports viewers and as fans, it's not something that people have taken too long, I think, to adjust to. This fact that there's a pretty black and white element to this, which is getting a knock in the head and you're done. Yeah.
All right, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Don't worry, Eoin. United are absolute trash, says David. Arsenal have this one in the bag. All they have to do is turn up.
Yeah, Arsenal love beating trash.
Yeah. We're back with former Irish professional cyclist Nicolas Roche right after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Graham Rowntree has been announced as the new coach of Munster Rugby.
Munster legends Alan Quillan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
That was such a big momentum changer for me.
Just because you came on the podcast a few weeks ago doesn't mean that we're not going to analyse you very, very strictly.
The Red 78 with Alan Quillan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, so Pinergy today committed to hashtag Power the Difference for Orwell Wheelers Cycling Club in Dublin as part of a new 3-year sponsorship deal with the club. The partnership will see Pinergy become the club's principal sponsor and official energy partner, as well as the title sponsors of the Pinergy Orwell Wheelers Randonnée. an annual 146-kilometre open road event which will take place in Dublin on Saturday, April the 30th. And I'm delighted to be joined by Olympic cyclist and former national road race champion Nicolas Roche. Nicolas, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, good. You've recently also taken up a new role with Cycling Ireland. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, so back in January I was approached by Cycling Ireland asking me if I wanted to look after initially the elite men's road team. So I'll be the sports director, as they call it, for the Europeans and the World Championships this year. And I will do some appearances with some of the younger guys during the year too. I'm not sure. I think if there is a women team going there to the Worlds, I will also look after them too.
Okay. Was that something that was on your radar, or was this like completely out of the blue and you're thinking, actually, yeah, I could do that?
It was something I always wished I was going to get the phone call the day I retired. And actually, when I retired, I was like, hopefully now someone's going to approach me. And it took them a couple of months. But when I get the phone call, I was like, oh, yes, this is great. I always said publicly that I wanted to get involved with Cycling Ireland and kind of give back my time to Cycling Ireland. And when I got the phone call, Nicolas, are you interested? I said yes straight away. So I was really happy.
And the actual technicalities of the role itself, is that something that you had been thinking about when you were still cycling?
It is. I always had it in the back of my mind that hopefully I could come on board. Especially last year, one of my really good friends, Benati, was appointed the CT, they call it, in Italy, of the national team there. And I could just see him going to the races and getting behind the team, and everything he was sharing just kind of gave me even more will to become that role in Ireland. My role in Ireland is not as important as his role in Italy. I'll be more focused essentially on the Europeans and the Worlds. We don't have a full international program the same way other bigger nations have.
A couple of things. Is this something that you'd like to do for a team in the professional game as well? Is that side of cycling something, that kind of tactical, technical side of trying to build a team and be a director sportif, is that something that is also in your future?
So look, initially 6 months ago, I was more focused on trying to go into commentary and on TV. And then I realized how much I've had the opportunity to do it with Trinity Sport a few times this year as a sports director with the under-23 team, and absolutely loved it. And I'm kind of looking more now into why not go into World Tour teams next year into the sports director role. I much prefer the kind of management, logistics and organization role rather than just actually being in the car and kind of directing. I find it very limiting, where I kind of like to get involved with the whole bigger picture, but one kind of goes with the other. So yeah, it is something that I'm now looking at for the future that I hadn't really ticked a couple of months back.
Again, is that like, were you one of those cyclists who, when you were on one of the tours, were kind of constantly chatting to the backroom staff, going, where are we going to be? What's the hotel like? Or were you literally like interested in nothing except making sure that the tyres were pumped, the oil was on the chain, and you were ready to go?
No, I wasn't quite excessive with the oil and the tyres were pumped. You kind of have to, you're surrounded hopefully by a bunch of professional staff, and you do hope that everyone does their job right. But I was always very talkative with the staff. I find that, you're in a team, and a team is not a segregation of a group of cyclists and a group of staff. A team is a team. So even at breakfast, if I'm usually an early riser, and I'd like to go down, and I'd usually sit down and have a coffee with them, have a chat, talk about things, discuss things. If it could be mechanical, it could be about food, or just about daily life. But I think it was really important to keep a close relationship with the staff. They may not help you win a race, but it's easy to lose a race when a staff doesn't look after you the way you should. And I think it's very important to respect them, because they are part as a team, as a whole. And I think it just creates a better vibe in the team when you look after the staff. But I wouldn't go and double check if my tires were pumped. I'd kind of ask him in the morning the pressure, and if he'd say if it's 6.8, well, that's okay, it's 6.8. I wouldn't go and squeeze with my finger to double check his work.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's good man management. It does sound like you were kind of always at the back of your mind preparing yourself for a life after cycling. And it also strikes me listening to you that you had kind of the perfect career to become somebody who is involved at that, because you understand pretty much every aspect of it. You understand the responsibilities of the team leader, but you also understand the responsibilities of the domestique, and then the young rider coming through who has pressure on them because they've got to get the contract, and you also had a bit of pressure because of who your dad was as well. So it's a unique skill set and experience that you will bring to this.
Yeah, you've actually summed it up better than I would have. And it's true in my career, I was lucky enough to go through the rise of, trying to make it through and also trying to, initially when I turned pro, there was always high expectations and it was easier for me to disappoint. And I was always trying to prove myself, to take it step by step, and then going into a young team leader with all the responsibilities to then going into the domestique and then finally finishing being really kind of the mentor with the young guys in Team DSM. So I kind of covered the whole circus, and I've seen the good and the bads. And when I was a domestique, I could understand what a team leader needed, because when I was in that position, I remember when I was a team leader, I remember when the guys did this and when we rode on this side of the road, and so I could kind of relate to and anticipate some of the needs of the team leaders. And in the same way, when the young guys are there, I still remember my fears, like if it was yesterday, and trying to reconfort them and give them a lot of my experience that I had through the 17 years. So, finishing as a road captain, as they called it, I think that naturally goes into the role as a sports director, because when you're a road captain, you're basically a sports director on the road.
Is becoming the director sportif of Cycling Ireland a help then when it comes to actually getting one of those jobs? Because what's that process? It's, in football we understand that, unless it's very, very unusual for somebody to walk straight into one of the big teams, you kind of have to work your way up. But for you to get into one of the World Tour teams, how would that actually happen?
So firstly, I need to go through this course, which is in October. So I applied for the course in February. So once I get that course validated, then I can access to the World Tour. So you can actually start being a sports director in continental level and continental pro level. So the Division 1 and 2 and 3, to make it easier to understand. So the World Tour, you need to have this course validated. And then obviously then you have to be sourced by one of the teams. So the same way as you get approached by teams as a rider, it's a bit the same for a sports director. So it's going to be my job to kind of make a few phone calls and hope someone picks the phone up and agrees to, one, start talking about a project, and two, agreeing on a job. And
is there an assistant sports director role, or is there a role that you could take that isn't the big job straight away?
No, there is. What they will do is they'll send you on a lighter program, and maybe not on the World Tour level, or you'd be what they call it a second sports director. So a little bit what you were saying now, where you'd be sitting in the car next to it and kind of learning process, and then they'll give you the chance to be a sole director on some of the smaller races. So they don't just throw you in there and you drive into Tour de France straight away. You kind of have, it's the same way as a rider. You just kind of have to build your profile and also learn, because being, behind the car is one thing, driving behind the race is one thing, but it's all, today there's so much technology available that you spend so much time analyzing the terrain now. So you do, all these presentations and PDFs in the morning. It's not like before. I remember my first races, they'd come up with a map and they draw an arrow for where the wind was coming, and they draw like a little triangle for where the mountains are. Now everything is done with a program called Velo Viewer, and you can access to speed bump, and you have to kind of click on that speed bump and say, this is the speed bump 500 meters to the line, or this roundabout, and there's so much work to do that is not just about telling the guys what tactics they're gonna apply to the race.
It sounds like being a director sportif 20 years ago would have been a way easier job than now.
100%, yeah.
How does it differ then in terms of the personalities of some of the people in those positions, comparing the start of your career to now?
Well, today, I believe there's a lot more responsibilities as a sports director. Also because there's also less freedom. There is a bigger management setup who will actually kind of give you or guide you through some of the goals they will want to achieve during the year, but also race per race. And your role as a sports director now is also to follow what you're told from a higher management board, basically, where before I think the sports director had a little bit more freedom in what he was doing on the day with the riders he had available. So I think everything has gone more and more controlled, and as cycling is developing and there's new roles and it's getting more and more professional again, You kind of have very, very set and specific roles, and every role has its limitations as well. And sports directors has new limitations too, and you have to kind of fit in with the general management's tactics, basically.
Is there a complicated element that comes with that over a period of time as well, Nico, whereby you've got people who are funding teams who like to have a little bit of control over the team? Like, it's something that we would have seen quite a bit in Drive to Survive with regards to Formula One, where team principals will be under the thumb a little bit from certain owners who are real petrol heads themselves and really wanted to have their say. Is that a reality in cycling as well?
It is not as much. I don't know if you remember when I was at a team Kickoff, or crazy owner Oleg was a bit like that, and he liked to have the last say. And there was one day, so he always, on the Giro, for example, he'd cycle on the side of the road in the morning and leave the hotel at 7 and just go and ride his bike, and we'd catch him halfway up the race, and he'd be on the side of the road and he'd jump into one of the team cars. And regardless of the tactics of the morning, sometimes he'd just take the radio in the car and start giving you new orders, and that was his way of seeing it. So I've had the chance to have that experience to my book too, where some of the team owners just completely kind of let the passion take over their actual role of a team owner and not a team director, and even less a sports director. But I think today every team has a bit of an identity. That most teams are run with a management board where the owners are not that much involved, apart from 2-3 different teams. Like I said, I think that the most striking one I remember was Tinkoff back in 2014 all the way to 16 or 17.
Right. Just on this time of year, Nico, I guess we're coming into kind of nice weather now, but like when you're watching cycling in February, March, I presume now that you're off the saddle, you have no envy whatsoever of people who are in the peloton at that point, and it's only now that maybe you start to think, God, I'd like to be out there.
Exactly. It's easy in the month of December when it's raining and it's cold, and you start looking the first races in January, February, and everyone's wearing leg warmers and crashing and mucky faces, and just the pain and again all the stress of the cycling and racing in the rain. And then now you look at the videos on TV and it's 20 plus degrees, the racing starting to look really good again. And I'm kind of saying, that's the cycling that I love. I used to love from the second part of the year, from April all the way to August. Those were my kind of favorite months. So now, and also I was so taken with the dancing that I kind of was able to kind of step away from cycling. And now that I'm back, and I have a bit more time to go on the bike. And last week I was back in south of France and training with some of my friends who were leaving to race this weekend. It does feel sometimes that's like, maybe I could do another year, but obviously I think that if I went back in the bunch, and again when all the conditions are perfect, yes, it's enjoyable, but you sometimes I'm just your memory is very selective. You always remember the good moments and not the tough moments when you're lying on the ground with your knees bleeding out and a couple of guys sitting on top of you.
Was there any event early in the year that was particularly grim routinely?
I think at the beginning of the Dance with the Stars, I was still feeling very guilty about not going out training, and I was going out early mornings, in the evenings, doing 10K runs. And it was very hard for me to get out of that routine of thinking that I was still a professional cyclist. There was a moment where the dancing became so competitive and I had to really push up my game that I was just too tired to go out on the bike, and I had to go out maybe once on Monday mornings was kind of be our half rest day. And I was able to really, really cut with the whole, I'm not a professional cyclist anymore. But still, even today, my body still kind of pushes me to go out training.
The identity that you had as a professional cyclist was very deep-seated, and it sounds like the competition of the dancing was important, but it also sounds like the future career still involved in the sport that you've given your life to is also important for you. Are you feeling now that you're more you as a person than you were as a cyclist, and that you're less the cyclist than you used to be?
I think so. I think already the last couple of years of my career, when I was realizing that, even in my cycling position, I was able to relax more. As in, when you're a road captain, the pressure is not the same as when you're a team leader. When you're a team leader, sometimes you just have to give so much that you just pick your battles. You can't lose energy fighting over everything, and you just kind of have to get on with things sometimes. And that's the way of kind of you protect yourself. The later years of my career, I was able to be more accessible in many ways, and also express myself. Because I could actually go and challenge, and I could actually go and give a stronger opinion. Now that I'm completely out of cycling, again, when I'm commentating, it's easier for me to be able to give an opinion, and also because you actually see more when you're outside the cycling bubble than when you're stuck in it.
Is that advice that you can then use when you're in your role with Ireland to the cyclists? Because some of our cyclists at the moment are doing absolutely incredible, and they probably still are in that bubble. Like, is that wisdom that you have acquired that you can impart now to them?
I certainly hope so, and I think with Cycling Ireland appointing me sports director, they were hoping I would do that, and I certainly hope that I can bring as much help, advice on different aspects, and even in cycling, but also out of cycling. I've had quite a ups and downs in my private life too. So. There's obviously it's always easy to give advice, but it's just I've lived in I think 6 countries now. Went through divorce, one's enough, but all these other things kind of help with even how to help out with taxes, to move to one place, move to the other place. I've had quite some knowledge I could share, because cycling is great, and you can talk about diet and training and go on racing all you want, but cycling is also you have to take care of all the rest about physios, nutritionists, everything can kind of click, and there's a lot of information and a lot of things to do and to look after.
The other thing, and we talked a little bit about it, was the pressure of expectation because of your name. I think, so Sam Bennett exploded into the Irish sports consciousness over the last couple of years as well. Like, you do know what it's like to be high profile in a way that not a lot of cyclists have had to deal with. Essentially since your dad's era, when everything that your dad and Sean Kelly did was front page news all the time. There was like a pack of Irish journalists following them at the time. They were on TV all the time. They were on radio all the time. And then there was a massive lull. And then yourself and your cousin kind of re-established Irish interest in cycling. And then Sam took it to the next level by winning the green jersey. And I don't know if that next generation of cyclists, hopefully they will get the coverage, and the coverage will continue, but it's not an easy thing to deal with, I suspect.
No, it's not easy. And look, what Sam did to win the green jersey was absolutely fantastic. And just by winning the stages already in the Giro, without even going to the Tour, which is humongous. But the stages he won in the Tour the previous year, in the Giro the previous year, was it 4 stages in the Giro? That was like, wow, no one had been capable of doing that since I don't even think Kelly won 4 stages in one single Grand Tour. And then the year after, getting in the green jersey, what I feel today is, unfortunately, with Sam having his issues with his knee, the kind of hype that was about to explode again in Ireland kind of went down with his knee issue, and unfortunately, I think everyone's kind of waiting for Sam to come back to his top level and to go and get those really, really important big wins in cycling. We can see Eddie, who is just there and about, always, he's won his first overall race a couple of weeks ago in Italy. He's doing actually very well at the moment in Italy again, actually, in Tour de Alps it's called. So Eddie is there. The thing is, obviously, when you have the green jersey of the Tour de France again is really, really next level. Eddie now is fighting with, like, if I was myself or Dan, but even Ryan Mullen he's the underdog. Might not be as popular or in the media as the other two, but he's there knocking bells. Had a pretty good classic season so far. So it's just hopefully that Sam comes back up and start winning those races more often like he did the last couple of years. And I think it will kick off again, because cycling has generally exploded since post-COVID, or actually during COVID. And although this kind of new cyclists are not really interested in racing, they like to go, they discovered cycling to go and take a better fresh air, get out of the house when you've been locked in for so long. They're not really interested in racing yet, but I think there is some potential of being kind of new cycling fans, or just kind of following a little bit more what is happening in the cycling world, because they enjoy being on the bike, and it kind of one will click into the other.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that Owen mentioned Drive to Survive. Cycling is really set up for a drive to survive, where we get the ins and outs of the crazy owners and the egotistical team leaders and the domestiques and the road captains. It's the perfect sport for it.
Is and you know, from what I understand, I think the Tour de France signed with Netflix now, and again, like I absolutely love Drive to Survive, and you know, living in Monaco for over 10 years, I've been with some of the former Formula One drivers. I was more friendly with the older generation, like David Coulthard, and we go out on the bike and we talk cars, and obviously he's quite involved with the Formula One, and I've always kind of followed it from afar, but I just, like many people, just fell in love with the show, and it just is so interesting. It's almost like a Hollywood movie rather than a reality series. And I think that if cycling are courageous enough to really go into the conflicts, and you know, we don't want to see everybody hugging each other and telling how brilliant they are. That would be terrifyingly boring, where and also untrue. I think why Drive to Survive works is because you can actually feel that they're not all best buddies, and sometimes I feel in the cycling world they want to make you feel that you always love and hug and shake hands, and it's great, but it's not always like that. There is competition. You're there to beat the other guy, and you can have respect. Don't take, you know, you can be competitive and have respect. One doesn't go without the other, But not everyone is friends, and it would be good if they do really open up into those tensions and people talk freely, rather than always trying to be kind of very socially correct.
Who's the member of the peloton that you would be most looking forward to seeing getting the inside track on Netflix?
I don't know, actually. That's also one of the things that will make this very complicated. Is if you look at it as a whole, like the Tour de France is 190 cyclists. It's not 20 pilots, so it's a lot more difficult to go into who do you talk to. And I think sometimes, you know, again, when you're a team leader, all that, you kind of have to be in your bubble and you isolate yourself. And I think sometimes it would be almost more interesting to go into someone who is maybe not as famous, who is doing his first Tour de France, who is struggling, rather than going for the first kind of top 10 in GC and a few top sprinters there, and going again, developing the kind of faces that we know that speak every weekend in the media. I think it'll be a lot more interesting if they actually went into some of the newer riders, or again, riders who are suffering, or riders who just had a crash, and who are more, like I said, maybe not mediatically interesting because they're not the highest profile, but they might have, you know, easier ways to communicate.
One last thing, you talked there about the increase in cycling. Myself and Owen have both dabbled a little bit, particularly since COVID.
Generous to us.
A little bit generous to us. Do you feel that, though, generally, that particularly in Ireland, that like we have this very rich tradition of cycling that like goes way, way, way back, and it feels a little bit like the sport is kind of rising again, but that it's going to need a concerted effort and a very unified front, and every opportunity that we have to talk about it and to push it, and particularly just the safety aspect of it for us, for the amateur cyclists, and for parents getting their kids into it. Like, that's another big thing that we could all do with a significant push on.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. And you know, when I in Ireland, I'm always kind of busy, so I do drive as well, and I do see sometimes, you know, it is difficult to overtake. There's no room to overtake cyclists, and you have to be very patient, which not everybody has that skill. But also, even in the city centre, I found that some of the lanes, you know, you suddenly arrive and there's a pole just in the middle, and you don't know where it's coming from. And it is, safety is it is a preoccupation, and you know, I mean, it's what I appreciate. It's great to see a lot of people wearing kind of high-vis coloured clothing and also lights. I think lights are key, especially here in Ireland. The rear light, but I even wore the headlight here when I was back in the winter, just because the light was so low. But obviously, helmet is essential. I wouldn't go out without a helmet. But again, I think traffic, especially coming towards the centre, is very, very dangerous, and you just need to be always cautious. And as you know, there's so much that can happen that you cannot control. But I think that there's no chance to kind of not be cautious. But it is a main preoccupation. And look, I'm lucky enough to be here in Dundrum and just shoot out into the Wicklow Mountains, and I'm kind of way out of traffic. But I know that when you're kind of close to a town centre, it could be quite sketchy, and it is a major preoccupation.
Yeah. Do you feel
look, there is a lot of new greenways, aren't there, being built around Ireland, and I think that's very encouraging, though.
For sure. Do you feel it's less safe to cycle around Dublin City compared to, say, cities in France, Belgium, Netherlands?
No, in fairness, I think cycling in cities, as much as is being promoted and pushed by politics and every government, and they are trying to create all these new accesses. Unfortunately, I think the older cities is just more difficult because usually they're just narrower, and there's no space to have a bus lane, a cycle lane, a e-scooter lane, a car lane, and a taxi lane, when has been 2 lanes for 50 years, and you're trying to make 4 lanes out of 2 lanes, basically. So I think they are conflicted with some historical issues where more modern cities or newer cities, when they are growing or developing in modern areas, it's easier to think ahead and to put a proper bike lane there or a proper bus lane there, which kind of makes it safer. But look, I've cycled in most countries and in major cities, and unfortunately the problem of cycling lane is a big issue in all of them.
Nico, great to have you with us this morning. Best of luck with the new gig, and thanks a million.
Thanks a million.
That's Nico Roche there. He's helping to promote the fact that Pinergy have been today announced as the main sponsors for the Orwell Wheelers Cycling Club. It's a 3-year sponsorship deal. They'll become the club's principal sponsor and official energy partner, as well as the title sponsors of the Pinergy Orwell Wheelers Randonnée, which is an annual 146-kilometre open road event which takes place in Dublin on Saturday, April the 30th. That's 9 days to get ready for 146k. Could you do it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
How far could you go?
I could probably push myself to 70, 75 now.
Could you?
Yeah.
That was quick.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly it does. I haven't done that now, but I've done 50, and I didn't feel bad after 50 at the weekend at all. I could have kept going.
Wow.
But
you're a dark horse.
Times it was on a greenway. You see, that doesn't count. A greenway 50 is like a regular road's 35 maybe.
I don't know. I mean, I'm very impressed considering where you've come from.
I don't think I've gone very far at all. You haven't seen my times. You don't know how long it took me.
I mean, it's the fact that you finished it. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
It's not a race.
Certainly felt like one.
0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. If you want to get in touch, you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. You can also use the hashtag OTB AM. And OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. You just don't know what Arsenal team are going to show up, says 91 Devo. United were in very poor form the last game against them in December and still managed to win. There's no consistency with Arsenal. I mean, this is true. I mean, it's weird because there is consistency. When they're good for a while, and when they're bad for a while. So maybe they're entering a good for a while phase.
Yeah, and it does feel that there's been kind of like more reliability about them this season, but like you're coming from an extremely low base. To say that Arsenal are unreliable this season is not to say that they haven't made progress. It's just that it was ever thus with Arsenal. Like what the most encouraging thing from them is who performed well last night, and one of those players was obviously Nketiah, who you mentioned, and El Neni in midfield. I don't think either of those players are Champions League quality, but if they can somehow put in 8 out of 10 performances between now and the end of the season, which isn't unthinkable, it's only 6 games, then they might be able to snatch it, but they would be overperforming, I would suggest, compared to some of the quality that Tottenham have.
And think how big a moment it would be. It would set Spurs back, which would be very important in the long term. It would offer them Champions League football and put them into a sphere where the striker at Benfica only wants to play Champions League football next season. It's like, well, come to us. You know, like it's transformative. So big month.
And if they don't, then obviously Tottenham are Champions League football. They'll still have Conte, and Manchester United maybe next year is the year where, well, Manchester United will still be able to attract better players than Arsenal in the summer if they're both not in the Champions League. So I think that the stakes are pretty high, to be fair.
They really are. All right, to celebrate the end of the race season at Punchestown Festival, and with thanks to Close Brothers, we've 2 pairs of tickets to give away for next week's festival. One lucky winner on tomorrow's show will have their tickets upgraded to include lunch for 2 and B&B at the Louis Fitzgerald Hotel with coach transfer to and from the racecourse. Punchestown is always a great few days out. All you got to do is identify our mystery voice this morning. Who is this iconic Irish jockey and reigning Tipperary Person of the Year?
You know, not even 12 months ago that I was lucky enough to win a Grand National.
Just tell us who she is and text your answer to 0879 180 180, or you can tweet us at @OffTheBallAM, or you can comment wherever you're watching. I suspect she's going to be the repeat Tipperary Person of the Year. Not very like Tipperary to go back to back, is it?
Zing.
There you go. Time for the papers.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
Ah, no, Eamon, come on, don't be, no, I'm not having that, no.
All right, we can start with OTBSports.com. They just don't know what they're doing, says Mark Lawrence on Manchester United. It's true, you don't know what you're doing, they sing, and it's true. Some messages are harder to get across than others. This is coaching out bad tackling technique. It's Andy Dunn in the show last night. Waterford have sacked Ian Morris, their manager. Munster have signed Irish qualified centre Antoine Frisch from Bristol. I see some people giving out about that on Twitter, but if you're signing Irish qualified players, if they're good enough, if this is a mediocre, no good player who's going to just clog up an opportunity, then that's no good. But if it's somebody who's actually going to make it to the Ireland squad, fair play, if it represents value. Back page of the Irish Independent, Tipperary coach Dunn facing 3-month ban. This is Tommy Dunn, who was yellow carded and then red carded after a verbal altercation, it says, from Colm Keys here. Colin Bonner says he was a huge loss on the sideline, huge energy, and has a big voice. So let's just right, you a bit of jaw, 3 months, wrestling somebody by the neck to the ground. No, that's you're not getting banned for that. Are we sure about this? Is this?
I wonder if part of it is like the arguments that are made in those hearings where it's like, should a poor fella, he's only a young fella, he's going to miss the game that he's trained so hard for. Actually, when it comes to sideline staff, that actually the book does routinely get thrown at them. Like, I mean, you picture Davey up in his corporate box at Wexford Park or wherever it was. Maybe that was when he was Clare manager, actually, just can't remember. And there's been notable other instances as well where managers have been sent off or have got bans. It's the players who often get off easier. And like, I mean, the sport is all about the players. You can see why people might have a soft spot for them, but I think it maybe is a different thing. And I think that the arguments are a slight bit different. But I'd be interested to hear what was actually said.
Bridge of Highs, Arsenal stun Blues to reignite top 4 bids. That's the front page of the Examiner, and they're still talking about the Limerick Cork match, obviously. Roy Keane reduced to role of pining for former glories, the headline on Dan McDonald's piece at the back of the Herald. Hurt Pogba set to walk away, midfielder ready to call it quits as United limp from one crisis to another. He's not showing up for the rest of the season is the implication of the headline. It's a knockout. MTK Global to shut down after unfair scrutiny, so the company is gone at the end of the month. Selling out Tala, the priority for McCabe. That's Katie McCabe. We'll hear a clip of that in a while. Phil steam ahead. It's Phil Foden who scored the third last night, was it? So the second goal of their 3-0 win last night, and they're now top of the table by a point from Liverpool after a relatively routine 3-0 win against Brighton. And then Gunners Ed in right direction. Champ Hughes joins the Elite 200 club. Armagh man and champion jockey-elect Brian Hughes celebrates with Wayne Room colleagues after becoming only the 4th jump jockey ever to ride 200 winners in one British season at Perth yesterday. So Irish jockey's best in the world. Kinahan's gone bout of business is the front page headline on the Daily Mirror, which is tab of the morning to you. And Mavels City turn heat back on Klopp as they go top with a ruthless victory. So Riyad Mahrez underrated. I put it to you.
By who?
Well, everybody. It's like when you're listing off the superstars at Man City, people go De Bruyne, Foden. Earlier in the season, it was Silva. Now it's Mahrez.
I don't think this. I think that people appreciate the fact that he is in a collection of Manchester City's best 15 players, and everybody accepts that that's the level of depth that you have. Like, I mean, this will be interesting. Who do you rather have in your squad? Diogo Jota or Riyad Mahrez is probably the comparison there. Who actually is, if we're accepting now that Luis Diaz, Mane and Salah is Liverpool's front three, then Jota is your first man off the bench. Who does Pep start in a Champions League final if they get there, for example? There's a chance he does start Mahrez, to be fair.
I think he does, yeah.
So maybe the comparison actually isn't the same. Maybe it's Luis Diaz versus Riyad Mahrez is the actual comparison there. Who do you rather have in your team?
Well, I'd have Mahrez at the moment, you know?
Yeah, I think he's absolutely in that same conversation. Like, do we put Luis Diaz and Jota on a pedestal above Riyad Mahrez? I'm not sure we actually do. Like, I mean, Mahrez was part of one of the biggest fairy tales in Premier League history, and deservedly got his move and has.
It's an incredible career.
Yeah, and like some of his. Some of the goals that he scored over the last couple of years have been absolutely outstanding. I actually think he's correctly rated. Maybe my question initially was like, maybe is he underrated by Pep himself?
I don't think so. I think Pep loves him. Djokovic and Navratilova lead angry backlash to Wimbledon player ban. So the Russian players and Belarusian players are going to be banned from Wimbledon. And MTK Boxing Company, founded by Kinahan Folds, the back page headline on The Guardian today, where a story of Donald O'Crae's is headlined that way. Right. Will O'Callaghan's with us. Will, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How you getting on?
What's going on?
Riyad Mahrez is a nailed-on starter if Man City get to the Champions League final, by the way.
I think so too.
Yeah. I think Mahrez is their right attacking midfielder now. I think he's 100% going to start there. Bernardo Silva play a little bit deeper.
He's in the top 5 players in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think so. I think on form this season he definitely is. Like, for me, probably João Cancelo has been the underrated Man City player this year for everything he can give off either wing. He can play slightly further in field. He's been hugely creative for them. And Rodri has been brilliant in midfield. I think he's probably an outside shout for player of the year, but the only thing is they generally will go for attacking players. So Bernardo Silva, Mo Salah and Mahrez are probably going to be the 3 players in contention at the end of it.
De Bruyne.
Why did he start him against Liverpool?
Why didn't he?
In the Premier League.
I suppose horses for courses. Plus, as well, they had played the game midweek in the Champions League against Man City, so he made.
Atletico.
But if it's Liverpool in the Champions League final, then it's horses for courses.
Well, I don't know.
I think he'd start. I think if it's a fit.
Did you not see that they had 76 physio appointments afterwards with the physios whose job it was to do physio?
He wasn't fully fit.
Well, maybe he was. I don't know.
That was it. Yeah. Not rather than
he genuinely did make changes because of the game against Atletico during the week that week. Like, he made 7 changes.
I did think it was whining. It was like, oh, well, my players needed treatment after the game. Well, I mean, they get treatment every day anyway from the physio, so like, stop whining.
Yeah, he didn't.
Tough luck as well. If you're going for the Champions League and you're going for the Premier League, you're going to ship injuries and you're going to ship fatigue. So
yeah, I agree.
I just think there's a random Jesus-shaped curveball coming when Pep Guardiola does inevitably throw his curveball in the Champions League final. That's all I'm saying.
Or against Real Madrid. Predictions yesterday on the show that David Myler was like, no, he's going to get into his own head against Real Madrid. I mean, if Real Madrid were to knock him out this time when he's got the best team in Europe, that would be.
We all remember Eric Garcia against Lyon, which came absolutely out of nowhere. Like, Pep makes these decisions sometimes at big games, and Dani Alves up front against Real Madrid when he was Barcelona manager a few years back as well. You never know with Pep, but he does, like, I'll admit, take Owen's point entirely. He likes Gabriel Jesus in some big games, but I think surely if he's gone out in a Champions League final, Riyad Mahrez is a nailed-on starter. Yeah, I would think.
All right, what else you got for us?
Well, City are back top of the Premier League by a single point after that 3-0 win. They had to wait to break Brighton down in the second half. It took 60 minutes to break their resistance, but then won 3-0. So they're a point ahead of Liverpool now. There's 6 games left in the title race. Arsenal level on points with 4th place Tottenham thanks to their 4-2 win away to Chelsea. Elsewhere, we've got Everton 4 points clear of the relegation zone. Richarlison with a very late equaliser for Frank Lampard's side in that 1-1 draw, which they picked up last evening against Leicester. Burnley will have the chance to reduce the gap back to 1 point if they can beat Southampton tonight. It's the first first time in a decade that Burnley will play a league game without Sean Dyche as their manager. Last night's other match saw Newcastle continue their resurgence with a 1-0 win against Crystal Palace, and it is the first time that Newcastle have won 6 home games in a row in some 18 years. Sligo have claimed their maiden Airgrid Connacht under-20 football title. Jack Davitt scored 2 goals in the first half, and then Owen Smith and Jack Lavin scored late goals as they edged out Mayo at Markovich Park by 4-4 to 1 goal and 12 points. Limerick will have home advantage for their Munster under-20 hurling semi-final against Waterford next week. The Shannonsiders topped Group 1 following a 125 to 119 win against Cork at Porky Rin. Waterford booked their place in the last 4, 17-point victory against Kerry in Dungarvan, and the other semi-final will now be Tipperary at home against Cork at Semple Stadium. The reigning All-Ireland champions Offaly continue their defence of the Leinster under-20 football title this evening. Declan Kelly's side will host Kildare in the semi-finals at Bordenamona O'Connor Park. The other game in the last 4 this evening is a derby at Parnell between Dublin and Meath. Meath star Vicky Wall, by the way, says she has not yet signed for an AFLW club. The All-Ireland Ladies Football Championship winner admits she has interest in playing in Australia, but says her current focus is on the Royals. Wall says she has spoken to a number of clubs, but is yet to agree a contract with any of them. As you mentioned, across some of the back pages, the world's tennis number 1 Novak Djokovic leading calls at the moment against Wimbledon, saying the decision to ban Russian and Belarusian players is crazy. The Grand Slam has become the first tournament to prevent individuals competing from the 2 countries following the invasion of Ukraine. Djokovic has joined the ATP and WTA tours in criticising the All England club, saying the politics shouldn't be interfering with sport. In snooker, Kyron Wilson got past former world number 1 Ding Junhui last night by 10 frames to 8. He's into the second round at the World Snooker Championship. Joe Trump will resume 3 frames up when he goes up against Iran's Hossein Jafai this morning. The next stage kicks off at lunchtime. Mark Williams will start his match against fellow Welshman Jackson Page, which is the first match of round 2.
All right, Will, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. That's Will O'Callaghan. More from Will across today, of course, on otbsports.com. It is 8:51 this morning, and check out this week's edition of the Hurling Pod 2 for more Will goodness. Now, let's turn our attention to the weekend's Gaelic football action. I'm delighted to say Colm Boyle is with us. Colm, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
It seems a little bit early in the year for us to be talking about Galway Mayo, but here we are. What are the levels of excitement like where you are at the moment about the game this weekend?
Yeah, well, it's been one we've been all talking about, should I say, even throughout every league game. We've referenced April 24th. This is what it's all about. This is what they're all building on or towards. I think it's been the same for both counties throughout the league. So the last 3 weeks have gone by probably a bit slowly, and here we are. We're ready to go. Yeah, no, things are building nicely. The atmosphere is building, you could say. The anticipation is building, and all the talk from kind of Mayo side is who's available. And I suppose that's probably the most frustrating thing about not being a player anymore, is that I simply don't know or don't know for sure who's available for this weekend or not from a Mayo point of view and even from a Galway point of view. So yeah, it's strange in that way, but no, it's looking now to look forward to, definitely.
The big debate on the football pod this week, Paddy Andrews is like, you start Killian. If he's fit for half an hour, you start him, because the game could be over. They could win the game in that first half hour. James O'Donoghue was like, no. You bring him off the bench. Think of how mad the crowd will go when Killian is there doing his little warm-up on the sideline, and it's like, come on. And I'm like, I see both sides of this. I don't know how to make that decision.
Yeah, look, at my gut is that he won't start. And again, that's not going on Anthony. I know it's just that he's come back from a horrific injury. Nobody knows how the last 3 weeks have gone from. Okay, he played the last 20 minutes against Kerry. My gut is that it's going to be James Carr, Jason Doherty and Ryan O'Donoghue in an inside 3, and Carr and Doherty in particular are going to be told, eat into yourself for 45 minutes, and Killian's coming in then to finish the job, hopefully from a Mayo point of view. That's my gut. I could be wrong. I'd love to see Killian start, but I just don't. I think it could be too early in that process yet. You saw Tyrone last year with Colm McShane after coming back from a really, really serious injury, how they held him in reserve and how it worked for them, you'd have to say, throughout the championship. But definitely, with this being so early, still in his comeback, I think more than likely we're going to see an impact off the bench from Killian.
The McShane comparison is really interesting, because it did feel last year, as soon as he got one game, it was like, well, he's going to be a starter now because he's Colm McShane. And actually, they were smart about it. And one of them, the All-Ireland, I guess, in the end, certainly got him out of a few tricky situations on the way. So could that actually be the future for Killian O'Connor this year, if they get through this weekend and he's managing to make a huge impact for half an hour or whatever it may be?
Exactly, and look, you mentioned Carl there, like nobody knows, like Colm McShane was coming on. I think Cavan was first game they played last year and he played 20-25 minutes. You just don't know. He might have been able to train for a week after that. He could have been sore, and that could have been the kind of routine all the way through the championship, and you just don't know with with lads coming back from injuries, because they have to be minded, because it's not even just the injury itself, it's every other part of the body. And I kind of know that myself from coming back from injury. It's everything else that nearly starts to ache and get sore from that. So it's going to be interesting to see. Like, hopefully the last 3 weeks, as I said, have gone really well for him, and that'll leave him in a good place coming into Sunday. And again, if he starts, I'd love to see it, but I think more than likely we're going to see that, as Ger mentioned there, that war, maybe 25 minutes to go, that he's going off the pitch.
There's obviously been a lot of talk about Mayo and how much to read into their league final performance at the end. I think the consensus is that you can't really read too much into it. What about Galway on the same day? Beaten, took a late lead and ended up surrendering it again against Roscommon. Did they go a little bit more all out against Roscommon that day than Mayo did against Kerry?
It's very hard to know. I was at that game. It was such a flat game. It was so flat, like similar, I suppose, to Division 1 final. It's so hard to know how really hard they went for it, or how hard, should I say, training had been in a couple of weeks up to that. I think the one game, if I was James Horn, I was looking at Galway, the one game I'd probably look at in more detail would be in the Derry game up there, because it was a game they really, really had to win, and it was a game they were on the road, obviously. And they were really, really good that day. Now, it was poor conditions, it was tough conditions, but I was shocked how poor they made Derry look. A Derry team that a lot of people were talking about as potential Ulster contenders. So that's probably the game I'd nearly take more heat to. I'm not sure in the two Roscommon games after that how much. Certainly the following week was a dead rubber for Galway, and even the league final, again, I'm not sure how much you can read into, even though I think obviously again the Portuguese would have preferred to win. But if I was looking at Anton, I'd nearly be looking more at that Derry game and how really ruthlessly they went about dismantling Derry in that first half. The game was over at half time.
From a defensive matchup perspective, what do you do with Shane Walsh, and what do you think will happen?
What do I think will happen? Well, normally Shane Walsh against Mayo over the last number of years, he plays that bit deeper rather than playing in a centre forward position or in the half forward line. He usually plays as one of the two inside, or a third man just coming slightly deeper, maybe it's the top of the Z. I think that's more, he knows it's going to be a Lee Keegan, it's going to be a Paddy Durkin normally picking him up, so it's the manager or whoever it is generally protecting him, going back the pitch and making it that bit harder for the man picking it up, and maybe getting defenders like Paddy Durkin into situations where they're probably more comfortable out the pitch. Again, look, I talked about injuries are on. I don't know who's going to play on Sunday. I don't know if Paddy Durkin is fit, if Oisin Mullins is fit. If everyone is fit, I think it probably will be Oisin that picks him up. And like I said, I think Walsh and Colm are more likely to line up inside together as a two. And what I can see happening is Galway trying to flood bodies back, trying to frustrate Mayo more so than they would have done over the last 2 years. I don't think he's going to want to take them on in a kind of head-to-head battle in a nearly tennis match up and down the pitch, because I don't think Galway have the middle third players to match Mayo if Mayo have everyone fit in that regards, definitely from a physical point of view and an athletic point of view. So I think he'll try and create that space for the likes of Walsh and Comer by filtering load of players back, looking to frustrate Mayo, and if they get turnovers on them, 2 or 3 quick kick passes into the space inside, something like you would have seen Kerry have got the space, that's something they'll be looking to create definitely on Sunday.
It's obviously a new championship structure with the Tailteann Cup, and going through the back door is not going to be the safe passage that it has been for teams in recent years. There's no gimmies, there's no kind of warm-up matches, there's nothing against the Division 4 team who, like, half their players have gone to America. It's going to be against a good quality Division 2 team if you lose this, potentially, or maybe one of the best teams in Ulster, who knows. Like, it's Tyrone or Donegal will be floating around that draw when it gets made. As a result of that, this game has quite a lot on it. It's not like one of those games you can go, we'll be grand, we'll go through the back door and we'll lick our wounds, we'll be fine. So with that in mind, does that change anyway the thinking, the arithmetic and how you go for this, or is that to be parked entirely and the game needs to take on its own life?
Yeah, I think you just need to park it. I think you just need to treat it as it's been the last 2 years, that it's knockout, and you just have to simply go for it. Like I said, from a Mayo point of view, the qualifiers, it's you lose against Galway, and like you said, you could be playing Armagh, you could be playing a Tyrone, or, a Derry, someone like that from Ulster, a really tough team from Ulster. So it's somewhere you don't want to be. Otherwise, you get that win on Sunday, you're into a kind of final. You're one step away from an All-Ireland quarter final and being back in Croke Park in an All-Ireland series. So that's a huge a huge prize on offer for both teams on Sunday, and it's the same for Galway. Obviously, I think for Galway, for Pádraig Joyce, third year in charge now, he's looking for that one big win. He's been waiting for it the last couple of years. It hasn't come yet, so there is huge pressure on him, obviously, and on this Galway team coming to Castlebar on Sunday. But with it being in Castlebar, with it being away from home, might actually suit them. Might actually take a bit of pressure on them, put a bit more focus on Mayo. And they've been looking to come down. I think the last 2 times they came to Castlebar, 16 and 18, I think they won on both occasions. So they have a good record in the last couple of years there, and they'll be looking to take that into Sunday.
Are you worried?
Honestly, Ger, I think it's a 50-50 game. I really do. I don't think it's any more than that on either side. And that's not me talking Mayo down or talking Galway up. I just generally think that's the way it is when you take into the fact it's so early in the year. Like, people will reference the game in Croke Park last year as a bit of a gap between both teams. Like, it's a world apart from that April in McHale Park. It's a world apart from a roasting hot day in July in Croke Park. It'll be a completely different game. And even in that game itself, Galway, were the better team for 35-40 minutes. And Mayo, it was only really from the 50th minute on that Mayo got in front. And people probably look at that game a lot differently than it actually was. So to me, it's a 50-50 game. It's going to come down the stretch, and I'm hoping a Mayo bench with the likes of Cillian O'Connor, with the likes of Kevin McLaughlin possibly coming off that, may be enough to put it in Mayo's favour.
How did playing Galway in the 2018 era under Kevin Walsh differ to playing them under Pádraig Joyce?
I think it's kind of what I've already said with regards Walsh generally set up defensive, and it worked very well for them against us. I don't think it did much for them after that in regards against other teams, but against us it frustrated us, there's no doubt about it. And I can see, as much as Pádraig Joyce doesn't want to go into that kind of area where he's getting a load of bodies back behind the ball, I think that's what's going to happen on Sunday. I think if he looks at Mayo's league performances against the likes of, even in Armagh, which they bet, Armagh were very defensive, frustrated Mayo for long periods of the game. Tyrone, same thing, frustrated them for long periods of the game. I think that's what Pádraig Joyce is going to be looking at, and taking little things from Kevin Walsh's game plans. Like, they used to concede the kick out an awful lot against us. They used to let us have our own kick out, let us carry it out to maybe halfway, and then start to put pressure on us. It'll be very interesting to see, especially with more than likely Rory Byrne on Sunday. Will they try and target him? Will they try and go press high for kickouts, or will they be letting Mayo have the ball, letting it carry it out to a certain point, and then putting the pressure on, looking to frustrate, looking to turn over then? So, yeah, look at it. It's Pádraig Joyce generally has been more, should we say, attacking, a bit more open in the way they play. And look, they've had very varying degrees of success. The one thing I would say is that obviously with Bournemouth, they haven't won. We've beaten them the last 2 years. They hadn't had a chance then to gather themselves and go forward into the qualifier. So you will be expecting to see definitely a longer run in the championship for Galway this year, either way, regardless of the result on Sunday.
Yeah, I think the game hinged. Mayo obviously were excellent in the second half and kind of gave a full expression to their true identity. But at the same time, there were fairly significant injuries for Galway in that first 40 minutes as well that maybe are underrated when it comes to us. Looking back on that, and the previous years, as Owen has said on the show this week already, there was a point in it basically in the howling conditions in wintertime for that championship, and if Galway had won that, they would have ended up playing Tipperary in an All-Ireland semi-final. So I'd say when Pádraig Joyce as a manager goes to bed, his nightmares are all about this Mayo team. So their motivation is very, very strong, and as you've said, there's been times in the past where they've gone in as underdogs in this game and randomly just been able to beat you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And look at Pádraig Joyce, he doesn't need to get any motivation to play Mayo. I'm sure it's a game he's going to be well up for. And obviously there's a Cian O'Neill factor there as well. Obviously Cian was with Mayo and with James for a year in particular back to 2012. Obviously he's now with Galway, so there's all that to factor in as well. And look, I think Galway are going to come down with the game plan, like I said, to really just look to ambush Mayo and to frustrate and to take their goal chances when they're on. I think that's the big thing. I think when there's a glint of a goal chance, they're going to go for it with Comer and Walsh or whatever else it may be. I think it'd be interesting to see just the likes of Rob Finnerty play. Will he sacrifice him for a nearly more defensive-minded player, or maybe hold the likes of Finnerty for the last 20 minutes? Because I don't think they've a huge amount of options from the bench at the minute. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But there's so many parents are looking at, and it's so hard to know. Like Sean Kelly, for me, is an absolute huge player for Galway. Where is he going to play? He played midfield the last 2 games. I'm just wondering, is Park Joyce earmarking him to pick up Matty Rowan, who has been man of the match against Galway in the last 2 kind of finals. And I think he's the only player that would have the legs to go with Matty Rowan in a head-to-head battle. But I think he'd prefer to have him in an ideal world at 6 or 3, because I'm not sure how much he trusts his full back line. I think he'd prefer to have him at 3 or even at 6. But all these little things are going to be very interesting to see on Sunday.
And sure, look, it might start in one of those positions, and you end up in the middle of the game making decisions and changes that have a massive impact on the rest of your season. One last question: you named your full forward line, your expected full forward line a little bit earlier on. Is Aidan O'Shea starting 11 for you?
Depending, there's 2 things for me. Obviously, Jordan Flynn is a big injury doubt. If Jordan Flynn doesn't play, I would expect Aidan to play at midfield, and possibly the likes of Kevin McLaughlin or Ger O'Connor coming into an 11 position. If not, if Aidan doesn't play midfield, possibly you're looking at Ger coming into midfield, Ger O'Connor coming into midfield. But I have a feeling it's going to be Aidan going to midfield and possibly picking up Paul Conroy, looking to do a man-marking job on Paul Conroy and neglect his influence on the Galway team.
Okay, one last thing then. The suspensions that we've seen being lifted, as a player, are you paying attention to that's happening? So that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, what do you think of it now as somebody who is retired? We can see red cards, we can see suspensions, but they don't seem to mean anything at the moment.
If I look at, you would, if I was a player still playing and it was going on like the Donegal and Armagh situation at the minute, you would be paying attention to it, of course you would, even though as much as you'd be trying to tell people you're not, you're going to be looking in. And if I was a Donegal player this week, I'd be frustrated, to be honest with you. As an ex-player looking in, look at the whole suspension process in the GA and the appeals committee, and whatever way it goes, look, it's a joke. I don't think anyone else is going to tell you another way. My first reaction when I heard about the Armagh players, and this is no disrespect to the Armagh players, because if I was in their scenario, I would be doing everything. I would be on to my manager and on to county board doing everything I can to get me off. So this is not a go at them, but I just laughed when I kind of heard, because it's laughable. What is a referee supposed to do when next time the league breaks out? Whether it's at the end of the game or not, why would you bother even giving out red cards or subsequently going after, banning lads after what? Like, is there generally any point? Because they're going to get off. When it comes to a stage where solicitors and barristers are picking out holes in referees' reports and video evidence and whatnot, I don't know where we're going with this, but it is. Look, we're going to see more of it. You're going to see more red cards. You'll probably see Conor McKenna getting off. You'll probably see more of this happening, and it's nothing new. There's been numerous examples over the years where boys have been getting off red cards, blatant red cards through the years, and getting them off them, even very, very close, up to very, very close to the game. So it's something. It's not nice. It's not nice to see in a game like this happened. 3 weeks ago now, and we're coming up to a couple of days for the game, and the 3 boys have been cleared to play. It's not good enough. And look, I don't know what the answer is or what the fix is, but our system at the minute is it's not up to scratch, to be honest with you.
Colm, good stuff. Enjoy the games. Thanks a million.
Thanks a million, lads.
It's Colm Boyle giving us some insight into what's going to happen between Mayo and Galway. Your quick picks are tomorrow, so you can give us a quick preview here.
It's Mayo -2. That's the line at the moment, and I think that's probably close enough to what I'd be thinking as well. The Jordan Flynn injury is a big one, I think. I think that's significant, and obviously the only information we've really got is how he looked in Croke Park that day, and it didn't look fantastic.
I remember the Mayo Kildare game seeing Flynn point. I was like, yes! And I was like, oh, balls, wrong Flynn. 3 Flyns.
Yeah, of course.
Wrong Flynn. Unfortunately, he's very good. Even better than ours at the moment. Right, this is OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs, for an effortless finish to your day. One last opportunity to enter our competition to celebrate the end of the race season at Punchestown Festival, and with thanks to Close Brothers, we have 2 pairs of tickets to give away for next week's festival. One lucky winner on tomorrow's show will have their tickets upgraded to include lunch for 2 and B&B at the Louis Fitzgerald Hotel with coach transfers to and from the racecourse. Who is this?
Not even 12 months ago that I was lucky enough to win a Grand National.
The reigning Tipperary Person of the Year. To be in with a chance of winning, just tell us who that is. Enter, text your guest to 0879 180 180, tweet @OffTheBall, or comment wherever you're watching Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio for you today. At 1 o'clock, OTB Gold is Manu Petit. 3 o'clock is Leaders' Questions with Stuart Lancaster. 4 o'clock is our retro panel, Limerick Hurling in 2018. OTB Gold is Irish Football Special with Given, Quinn, McAteer and Kilban. And OTB is live tonight from 7 o'clock across all our social channels. Remember, you can just ask your smart speaker to play OTB Sports Radio, and of course you can also listen to OTB AM live on the OTB Sports app every morning. Up next, Tipperary MMA fighter Will Fleury. We'll also bring you Katie McCabe's comments on calls for Ireland to move to the Aviva right after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Marginal gains? XG? Top speed? Recovery? What's it all about? Want to improve but don't know where to start? With more data than ever now available, OTB Sports have teamed up with Whoop to cut through the noise and help you raise your game, no matter the sport. OTB Sports are delivering the metrics that matter. Meaningful metrics in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. See whoop.com for more. Follow OTB Sports social channels for the best insights and stats this season.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance PLC.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Last weekend, Ruth Fahey was writing a piece in the Sunday Independent, and she was suggesting now is the time to move the Finland game to the Aviva Stadium. Is that something that you'd be in support of, or is there a certain advantage in being very familiar with the surrounds of Tala and the relationship that the team has with Tala?
Yeah, look, I think the media have kind of caught on to something there. I think for me personally, it's not a conversation I've had with the team just yet. Obviously, 'cause it's not in our minds, it's not in our focus, because obviously we've got a big game against Georgia before any Finland game. So for me, I don't think it'd be ideal for us to up and move our home ground in the middle of the campaign. I think, yes, it's something we want to aspire to and we want to move towards. But I think for the here and now, I want to start selling out Tala Stadium before we kind of jump ship over to the Aviva.
Yeah. I sense from the outside, you all look very comfortable with Tala as well. It's become, part of your identity in a sense. Yeah,
it's great. Like, I think, especially before COVID kind of kicked in, we were really we were gaining momentum by obviously getting fans in and coming to watch us. And I think, for us, that we have that connection with our fans, especially at home in Tala. We don't need any distractions going into the rest of these games for the World Cup campaign. So, yeah, for me, in my opinion, I think we should stay in Tala.
It's Katie McCabe giving her opinion on what should happen next, and we should probably listen to that. Interesting that she hasn't talked to the rest of the team about it yet, but we'll ask them all about that over the coming days and weeks and months, no doubt. Now, we're turning our attention to MMA. I'm delighted to say Will Fleury is back with us in studio. Will, how are you getting on?
Yeah, good.
Congratulations, you won a belt since we last saw you.
Well, yeah. So that was over in UAE, or in UAE Wars in Abu Dhabi. So their fight pass promotion be a fairly it's a good belt to win, because it means you're kind of on the cusp of getting into the UFC, I suppose.
Okay, and that's the whole point, because last time I think you were with us, you were still with Bellator. So not to get too much into the politics and weeds of it, but fighters need to be business people and desperately need to manage their career properly to make sure you get the opportunity. So what was behind leaving Bellator and going to the other promotion?
I had a 6-fight contract with Bellator. I fought my 6 fights out. I was told I was being re-signed once the contract ended. That was in September 2020. And then by about February 2021, I was like, this contract isn't coming through, what's happening? Because of COVID and all that, they were saying, we're delaying our operations, we're not doing as many fights in Europe.
Right.
My visa application was going through. They were like, pending your visa application, we'll send you the contract. And then about a month later, I found out, we're not re-signing you directly, but we're still very open. If we're coming to Europe, we'll be working with you. And then eventually it kind of became like, we're not re-signing you.
Right.
Now, to be honest, at the time, I was kind of happy about that nearly, because it opened up I wasn't tied to a contract anymore. I thought, I'm a free agent now. You know, I've done well in my contract. I can go out and put myself on the free market and there's going to be opportunities there. There wasn't because of COVID, basically. So 2021 was tough. You know, it took a long time for anything to happen, basically.
So a fighter with no fights, basically. Right.
That was pretty much the position most people were in, yeah.
We were just talking to Nicolas Roche a little bit earlier on, and the quote that sprung to mind was athletes die twice, once when they lace up for the last time and once when they actually die. You're in the middle of your career, you think, and it's like, you know, your identity is definitely bound up in this. So what was that like?
So, like, to be honest, when the original lockdown happened, I thought it was going to be a bit of that as well. But I managed to fight 3 times in 2020, and I still fought once in 2021. It was a year gap. I think it was September 2020 to September 2021 I didn't fight, but it was tough. Like, I was lucky in a way because I had a bunch of young lads who were coming in training with me every morning, and I had a really good coach who was coming in with us every morning, so we were still progressing. And in a way, that period of time was massive for progressing as, you know, a fighter. But you need the purpose, you need the fight, you need the thing, you know, it's what keeps you alive. Like, so that was tricky, yeah.
Is there any way that you can bank that now as something that makes you plan for life after fighting?
Sort of, yeah. Look, you're definitely, like, I've always had an awareness this isn't going to last forever. It's a very short window, obviously. But at the same time, it's kind of made me hungrier to make the most of the window that I do have. And it's been frustrating to not be able to make the most of that window. So
that's the low point. When do you start having conversations with the other promotion?
So I fought after the Bellator contract ended, I kind of put myself out there. I got on to every promoter I knew. I got a lot back, but everyone's saying, oh, we're waiting on authorization to do this and we're planning on doing this during the summer. Very little of that actually happened. And then one guy he's a Polish promoter, but it was in Bulgaria, he was doing the event. So I managed to get a fight on that event in September of 2021. After that, I broke my hand. I displaced fracture of the middle metacarpal. So it's a pretty bad break. And that happened like first minute of the fight as well, which was annoying. But after the handbrake, it was, 12 weeks out. I wasn't even I wasn't fully back until about, 2.5, 3 months later. And then it became a thing of like Christmas, there's no fights in January.
Yeah.
So it was all about what's going to happen in February. And I was on to a couple of different management crowds. I signed with Rugby Sports. They seemed the most kind of consistent and they seemed the most honest. And they were like, yeah, we can do things, but you're not young. And, if you do well, we can get you in. So they got me a title shot straight away in UAE Wars, which was a great fight to get. I smashed it. So I'm on the cusp now.
And so on the cusp means that's a kind of feeder tour essentially for
basically,
UFC.
Yeah. Now they don't see themselves as that, but that's essentially what everyone uses them as.
Okay, so it's realistic. UFC is on the horizon.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not the only one. There's a few of us in Irish MMA who are right on the cusp.
Right. And what does on the cusp mean? How do you teeter over?
See, a lot of it is management. A lot of it is like who you know and how they're going to get you in. Now, like I was pretty reluctant to sign with anybody because they're going to take a percentage of what you earn, and you're already, it's not exactly the best paying sport in the world anyway. I had a pretty good contract with Bellator, so I was doing all right out of that. I wasn't paying a management fee. I was giving John his fee. Like,
you were managing yourself, or getting basically, yeah, yourself and John Kavanagh.
Yeah. And then it came to the point where I'm not really getting the opportunities I should be getting for a fighter with my record. So I did my own thing for that fight in Bulgaria. I know a lot of people in the game anyway, and I'd be good at getting on to people. So I thought, I'm going to do well out of this. Nah, you need to know the right people. When managers have the game sewn up a little bit, that's how they make a percentage out of this.
Yeah.
So I went with Rugby Sports, and it looks like having won that title should be a pretty good bet. Me getting into UFC pretty soon.
Okay, and how does that process work? Is that a multi-fight contract? Is it a one-fight contract? Is it like you get a chance at the UFC, and if you do well, they'll double down and give you a longer period? How does that work?
Just depends, yeah.
Right.
Depends.
That's all up for grabs?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
And it depends on your position going into it, what sort of contract you'll get and how long that contract will be and that sort of thing.
Okay. What do you hope happens? When do you hope to fight next?
So I do have a visa that I didn't realise. I had approval for a visa through Bellator.
To fight in the States?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a P1, I had a P1 from 2018 to 2020. I reapplied for my P1 in 2020 when it expired. So that expired in June 2020. I reapplied around September time. I actually had that approved in around September of 2020. I didn't realise that, but I never got the visa printed because of COVID and because everything was going on.
You've got some experience with the vagaries of the visa system, Owen.
Yeah, it's a minefield.
Oh, with the States, yeah, and they treat you lovely when you go in as well. But basically, I have to just physically go to the embassy and get that printed now, right. And then I have like a 2 or 3 month window with a visa. So if I can get in straight away that way, great. If not, I'll probably defend that belt, and if I can get a finish defending that belt, I'd imagine that'll be straight in. But you don't know. Nothing's guaranteed anymore.
No, of course. And if you were to fight in the UFC, like when you're looking at the level of fighters who are there at the moment, how do you feel you match up against them?
Very well. Yeah, like look, that's the reason you want it so badly. You're looking at guys and you're thinking, well, I have the skill set to completely dismantle these guys. I've trained with a lot of guys who are in the UFC. You know, it's not a different thing. They're the same fighters, they're the same people. It's just a different brand. And it's so much more like, look, every young lad gets into MMA because they want to fight in UFC someday. That's still always been my dream, and I suppose I feel like I owe it to myself to go and give myself a legacy, because Bellator wasn't really that, and that's no insult to them. You know, they did a great job, they paid well. They're weird promotionally. They're looking for kind of like fake superstars, and it just doesn't work. Whereas with UFC, if you're legit enough, you go in and prove it, and they'll give you the opportunity as long as you're legit enough. So this is my chance to go and prove that.
But was the UFC on that trajectory as well for a while, the creation of fake superstars, and have they gone more legitimate, to use that phrase?
There's always been a bit of both. Right. So like you look at, they tried to bring like our CM Punk, and they have other guys coming in that they're kind of protecting, but in general, after 1 or 2 fights, you're going to get to a point where you're going to have to be pretty good, otherwise you're going to be found out. And say even the likes of Sage Northcutt, he was a guy who was like really touted coming in, looked incredible, like serious athlete, had like some very fancy kicks, and they got him in and they got a few grapplers and they absolutely smashed him, and he got caught fairly quickly after that, and he fights for a different crowd now. So if you're not good enough, you won't last. And that's always kind of been, they'll bring you in, they'll use you for a little while, and then you'll get thrown to the wolves, and if you're not able to deal with that, best luck.
I guess from Bellator's point of view then as well, there was, from your perspective, some really high points. Like, I mean, I remember watching you there right before the pandemic in the 3 Arena when you had that win. Like, those sort of moments, to get to another point where you can experience that now and get that adrenaline rush, how important is that?
Huge, yeah. But, like, I kind of want to surpass any of that. There was some very special nights in the 3 Arena, and, like, it was a good buzz. But it's about kind of, look, are you one of the best in the world? And that's always what I wanted to prove. So fighting in the 3 Arena, yeah, it's incredible. It's an unbelievable atmosphere. But you can win a fight in the 3 Arena and it doesn't mean you're a class fighter. I want to go out there and prove that, no, I'm going to achieve way more than anyone in Irish MMA ever thought I could. Like,
can I ask, when you are a fighter without a fight, what's motivating you when you're going into training every day?
That knowing that you're going to have a fight someday. And even, say, mid-pandemic there, where it was fairly obvious you weren't, it's kind of that desire to just get better. Like, you're competing against other lads every day anyway. So if you have someone who can give you trouble, you kind of want to go back in the next day and get an edge and, you know, work on that tool that's going to be able to stop that guy giving you trouble. There's always little things you can find motivation in, and some of it is just like, well, I love doing it. And, you know, if you feel like you're progressing in anything, you're going to keep going back to it, and you're going to keep being kind of drawn back into the thing. So there was a few things I found over the lockdown that I was kind of getting a good bit better at, and I started to kind of nearly get hooked on it. And once you've got progress, you're hooked into it. Like,
what kind of stuff? Sorry.
So just like my hand speed was all like something I really wanted to work on. So I was doing all these drills at home, and it was just an easy, like, I bought a little freestanding bag that moves around, and I was just working my hand speed a load. And that was just something I spent like 45 minutes, half an hour every day, kind of just tipping around with. And then I'd be going in. So we were fully shut down for a while, obviously, during 2020. But as soon as we were back doing a little bit, I was kind of meeting up with a lot of lads in the morning. We'd do a session before the session just because we only had the one window and we normally have the whole day to train. So it was just like a 2-hour window in the morning. So we'd go in early, we'd drill, we'd like move around with each other, and you'd feel like, oh, I'm getting that a little bit, I'm catching that a bit earlier. Or like even leg locks was something that worked a lot over the lockdown, and like you could feel your brain just knowing things eventually, where it's like, oh, this was conscious for ages and now it's kind of a subconscious skill that you've acquired. Like,
yeah, so that's the benefit of training. Is John Kavanagh still your coach?
Yeah.
And what kind of involvement does he also have then in helping to shape your careers? Because he's obviously seen everything and knows how the whole business works.
So say with Bellator he'd have a large involvement. With most of the other crowds, less so. But it depends. Like, it just depends who the promoter is and how much he'd know them. So it's kind of like it's a personal relationship type of thing.
Yeah.
But say with the bigger promoter, like, you know, with UFC or with ONE FC or with even UAE Wars, it's kind of through your management you'd be dealing with those, and you're kind of paying them for connections, basically.
That's the whole point of having them on board,
basically.
Yeah, and it's probably a better thing as well, like to have a separation between the coaching and the management is important.
Definitely,
yeah. In terms of your record at this stage, right, like you haven't actually fought that much as a professional over the course of your career, so you know, it's not like there's the old phrase, oh, that team can't go to the well too much. You still have a bit left.
Loads, yeah. That's how I feel anyway.
What's your own kind of time frame here for the next couple of years in terms of, like, is there a cut-off point where you go, okay, that's my best shot has been given, or is it like is there an age, or is it a number of fights?
I don't think it's an age. Like, I thought when I turned 30 that I'd feel different or that something would change, and thankfully it hasn't. If anything, I've become a better athlete since. It's not a field sport. It's not where, you know, you lose that half inch on running down a pitch and you're just not as effective anymore. Like, I got better timing than I did 2 years ago. I'm probably faster at most of the things I was doing 2 years ago than I'm probably faster now than I was 2 years ago. And if you look, most of the guys at the highest level of the game, they're mid to late 30s. Now, I'm going to base it on how I feel and how well I'm doing, because if I can make a legit living out of this and, you know, like, get to where, like, I see myself, then it's going to be good times, and, you know, why not milk that a little bit? But if you're showing up and you get your ass whooped and, you know, it's not the way you saw it all, well then, what the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah.
You know? So
that's fair enough, you understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like...
And it's kind of a binary thing. You'll know from the results.
You know, it's going to be fairly obvious whether you're doing well or not. Like, so
yeah, that's the brutality of the game, isn't it?
Yeah.
The style, like, and has your style evolved to be more commercial as you've got older and you've realised that actually, if I'm going to do this thing, I need to win in this way, or
sort of? So, like, in the middle of my career, I had a lot of fights that were submission victories, and where I wasn't really hurting the guy on the feet. My last 2 fights, like, I dropped the Bulgarian, like, in Bulgaria I dropped your man 3 times. In the last fight I dropped your man 3 times as well, so 6 times I dropped. Now, I didn't finish either of those guys, they were both decisions. I have the excuse of having a broken hand both times, but it is an excuse. There were still ways there, and I look back at those fights and I was like, there's still opportunities there. But I didn't get hit on the feet once in any of those fights. I dropped my opponent 3 times each. I've definitely, like, look, even just I feel like I've kind of brought my game to a point where I'm not going to get fucked up by, or like, I'm not going to get challenged by what you're doing, and I'm going to find my way of hurting you. And that's been the case in the vast majority of my sparring, and I want the chance to prove that, basically. And you can talk all you want, but I've done it, and I want to do it in public.
The talking is actually also part of the fight game in a weird way, where you need to talk some stuff into existence. Are there specific UFC fighters that you have in mind, fights in target? Like, is that something that you can call people out and it becomes a thing and that will help you to get there?
Yeah, I think when I'm on the roster, that's something I'll be starting to do. But for now, it's about getting your foot in the door, and whoever they want me to fight, I'd be willing to fight.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not a thing of like, oh, that guy, I want that guy badly, because then you're going to be calling out some guy lower in the division. Okay, great. What's some win against somebody who nobody really cares about going to do for you?
Yeah.
Get me in. Match me with whoever the hell you want to, and I'll smash that guy. And then we can start talking.
Yeah, so otherwise it's empty talk until it's real talk, and then it's real talk. Yeah, and like, is there a time frame for that to happen? Is it when you say you're teetering in the brink? Is it like you'll know in the next month or two?
I would hope so, but again, it's obviously an unlimited time. As in, like, what are you going to go and do in the meantime? Like, will I defend that belt in Abu Dhabi? If I have to, I will. Go back, smash a lad there. Then you're in an even better position. Say if I get a title defence, they're talking to me about some Brazilian guy who's also 10-3. If I get a title defence against him and knock him out, I'm pretty much in. Is the way I'd see it. But then, there's no guarantee either.
No.
So then maybe defend that belt again. Okay, if you keep proving it, like if you are this and you keep proving it, eventually it's going to happen.
Yeah, you would hope so. The other thing is that the game is so weird and difficult to get into that, like, that's the whole benefit of having the management company, right?
Yeah, and they seem pretty competent. So I have faith in them and I have faith in myself.
How do you judge how competent the management company is when you're ringing around?
So I signed with these guys because the matchmaker with Brave, who I fought with years ago back in 2018, is now running part of this. Like, so he's the guy who I deal with on a daily basis, and he's an extremely competent. I know him personally, and he was one of the few people I met in MMA that I was like, well, he's a matchmaker, he's nothing to do directly with me, but I kind of trust him, because there's a lot of sketchy folk in this game. Like,
just what I ask, like, it's kind of more he's the exception to the norm, basically, the competent guy. It's mostly incompetent people, or
I wouldn't say incompetent, but like shady, and like, you know, you'll be used as a tool to get someone else where they want to be, and that sort of thing, you know. And like, that's life, that's everything in business, you know. But in a way, if you get somebody who you see as being honest and who you know, look, this person's seen me do well in the past, they know what I'm about, they believe in what I'm in, and they'll work for it. So
yeah.
You said that it's great to win a fight at the 3 Arena, but it needs to mean something. It clearly felt like winning a belt in Abu Dhabi was something that means something for your career. So was that even more meaningful? Could you take in that experience?
Yeah, it was class. Like, you know, I suppose having something physical as well. Like, you get a belt and it was cool, like, it's fucking pretty well made, and like, it's very heavy, and like, everyone I give it to is like, whoa.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
Yeah, that's nice, but it's satisfying for a pretty short period of time. Like, that's great, you've won this, right, what's next? I can do so much more than that. Like, the guy who I beat, I'd already beaten. It kind of does take away that sense of achievement. Like, he's their light heavyweight champion as well, and the whole reason they started doing this is because they wanted him to come down and win 2 belts.
Right.
And I was like, well, you think he's going to beat me? And I absolutely, like, I wasn't close at all. Like, but like, there's a satisfaction in that, but it's gone quickly. And I feel like I have a lot more in me, and I owe it to myself to go out and show that. Like,
what's your selling point to the UFC when you're having those conversations? Is it that you can bring an Irish audience in the States? Is it like...
I imagine it's my management more that are having those conversations, but more that, look, this guy will just give him any opportunity, and like, that seems to be how they work. If you're not coming in with a massive profile, which I'm not, like, let's be honest, you know, like, they don't really give a shit about me or care about what I am. But at the same time, I'm a legit fighter who'll show up whenever you want and fight and take on anybody. So it's kind of like, if there's a hole in a card, we can slot this guy into that hole. Then if you go in and you show what you can do, oh shit, you're in the door.
Yeah, that's how it works. You get one shot, one opportunity, as the song goes.
There you go.
So how is the hand?
Yeah, it's like, there's a small fracture, and it's kind of like affecting the movement of my wrist more than actually my hand. So that'll, like, it's 4 weeks since the fight, or 3 and a bit weeks since the fight. I probably have another like 3-ish weeks of healing, and I can do quite a bit during that 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I've, like, my last break was a lot worse. I was in cast for like...
Is it the same break, or is it a different break?
No, totally different break.
Okay,
yeah.
okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And like, you're unlikely to break the same bone twice if you let it heal properly, because the bone's going to be calloused. Like, you know, I had a huge lump in the middle of my hand from the callus of the last bone healing.
Okay.
So that's just a big block of bone. It's pretty unlikely you'll break that again, if you get me.
Okay. So all is good in that front, and hopefully you'll hear in the next month, and then hopefully a fight in the next 3 months?
Yeah, I'd like to fight during the summer, so say like kind of June, July, August time. And then again by the end of the year would be great.
All right, well, we wish you the very best of luck, and maybe you could be the next Tipperary Person of the Year after that was
Nobody's rooting Rachel Blackmore for a while now anyway.
I don't think so. I think she's definitely going to be for the next couple of years. Maybe if they win All-Ireland from this position and knock Limerick off their perch.
Yeah.
But
Wouldn't hold my breath.
A UFC belt, what might get you there?
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, best of luck with it. Thanks again for joining us in the studio this morning. A reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Donal Moran is the winner of our competition today. You're going to Punchestown Festival next week with thanks to Close Brothers. Rachel Blackmore was, of course, the answer for that one. Tomorrow we'll chat with Alan Quinlan, Caoimhe O'Neill, the Crappy Quiz is back and much more. We leave you this morning with Mark Lawrenson. Enjoy.
Hello, Dan.
Hi, Joe.
Interesting evening developing in the Premier League, perhaps. So it's Stamford Bridge, where there are empty seats, sanction-induced empty seats, we're reading. Well, they're missing a thriller in person. Chelsea 2, Arsenal 3 is where we are after an hour. An extraordinary game, really. So it kicked off in the 13th minute in Nketiah with the opener for Arsenal. Then Timo Werner on 17 minutes made it 1-1. It took a massive deflection. It was a little bit scuffed, but Timo's not going to say no. It was from outside the area. That made it 1-1. 27 minutes then, Smith Rowe made it 2-1 Arsenal. Odegaard with the assist. And then on 32 minutes, Azpilicueta with a truly deft finish. The finish of an experienced, grizzled old centre forward who knows his way around the penalty area.
Yeah, that's a good description.
And then on 57 minutes, Nketiah again. 3-2
Yeah.
Arsenal.
I'd say Nketiah and Smith Rowe. It's very, I'm not like the Arsenal story. Sometimes it's a bit repetitive. It's the same story again and again. Oh, look, there's Arsenal, but messing things up, or they're soft, or whatever. Like the various incarnations of it. But I sort of quite like the Smith Rowe story and Nketiah but particularly Smith Rowe because he's been far more prominent, because when they were in the Europa League in 2020 and played Dundalk, it was obviously the B team that played. It was like the Arsenal reserves a lot of the time, and Smith Rowe got chances to play in those games, and you're sort of watching going, yeah, he looks very good, but I mean they're all going to look very good, Joe Willock would have been involved in those games too, and a couple of other players who maybe hasn't pushed on at Arsenal. But it's a bit like Harry Kane played for Spurs against Shamrock Rovers in 2011, and you're thinking, okay, yeah, this guy scored his first goal for Spurs in Tala, in a group game, and Smith Rowe would have been prominent for Arsenal in those games. I remember speaking to a couple of Dundalk players, and they all had different names that they picked out of players that stood out that wouldn't be obvious. And now you're looking at Smith Rowe, who's I think he's a top player. I mean, it's actually probably England's depth of talent is pretty decent, that he's not sort of one that a lot of other countries will be probably starting him, but really this game is thrilling and all, but it sort of feels like the big story is happening elsewhere.
Certainly so far. 50 minutes on the clock, 0-0 between Manchester City and Brighton. 50 minutes, Man City at home, 0-0. The other two games, by the way, at Goodison, Harvey Barnes has Leicester City 1-0 up against Everton.
That's a big game too, actually, to be fair, yeah.
An hour gone in that game, and Newcastle Almiron are 1-0 up at home to Crystal Palace. But the headline news, I suppose, is thus far Man City being held by Brighton and Everton at Goodison 1-0 down to Leicester City. 50 minutes is just a touch too early, I would think, for Liverpool fans to get too hopeful.
No, Brighton have a good away record though, and I suppose just given the story of the title race, I mean, maybe it's not a big deal just for the fact that City had that big lead, and then all of a sudden they're playing a decent side, or being a bit tricky, and just following the reports of the first half, because we're seeing the Chelsea-Arsenal game, we're not seeing City. I mean, it seems like they've had chances, but it hasn't been sort of bodies, limbs, everything on the line or something. Brighton have done a good professional job of containing and keeping them out. But it is a sort of a test of discipline. I mean, a lot of these top sides, they're probably used to that really the weight of pressure pays off later on in a game, particularly one like City who keeps the ball, that it's just the concentration and the levels just eventually slip. That's why you see a lot of top teams winning the goals late, and people say, oh, is it a bit of luck or something? It's not. It's because just they wear down the resistance of teams eventually.
Well, to that point, it's been 65% possession, Man City, and they have had 8 shots. Brighton have had no shots. That kind of an evening. But stranger things have happened. Pep has decided to change goalkeepers from the weekend, so Ederson is back in goal. strongest team possible, really, or as strong as he needs it to be. Cancelo, John Stones, Laporte, Nathan Ake. Midfield is De Bruyne, Rodri, Gundogan, and then front three, Mahrez, Phil Foden, Bernardo Silva.
Yeah, De Bruyne back is significant. Didn't Pep and Graham Potter have some episode last year, wasn't it? Did Potter, did he apologise for over-celebrating when Brighton beat City? With previously Pep having sort of raved about Potter, and I think then Potter, they won a game towards the end of last season, and then he maybe celebrated a goal, went a bit OTT, had to apologise subsequently. So there's a little bit of history there, a little bit of something.
Let's turn to events at Anfield last night. Waiting patiently, Mark Lawrenson, we appreciate it. How you doing?
I'm all good, thanks. I'm even better as the minutes tick by.
Getting interesting. Certainly if Brighton can hang on to last 10 minutes, then suddenly an enormous amount of psychological pressure is heaped on City then.
Yeah, and you know, Brighton are better defensively than they are in an attacking sense. They're extremely well organised, and you know, they stay on the feet all the time. They don't dive in terms of the tackles, and hey, they might just hold out. You never know, do you?
Anfield last night. Let's start with some positives. There are times where you watch a match and you just have to say, man, it was a pleasure to watch that player do his thing. And Thiago last night was just a pleasure for everybody to watch. And it was amazing. Even about, 10, 15 minutes into the game, the crowd at Anfield were starting to realise, bloody hell, this guy is having a fairly extraordinary game, and started singing his name. And just as it went on, he was like, move out of the way, give me the ball. He was going by people, the beautiful passes, even putting in some slide tackles as well. It was really phenomenal. His best game for Liverpool?
Yeah, but he's had quite a few like this. I mean, I'm afraid I have to say I'm his biggest fan. I absolutely love him, and with your boys in the morning, I'm always raving about him. He makes the game look ridiculously easy, and he has the ability where he's looking to pass it somewhere, and he passes it somewhere completely different, and he does everybody with their eyes. But the fitter he gets, the better he gets. He sees things in some of the games that the other midfield players for Liverpool don't see, and he's a top player, and Klopp absolutely loves him. And by the way, have you seen his record in terms of the stuff he's won? Certainly, obviously, Barca and then Bayern. And he is a serial winner. And this season, he's been more available than any of the previous seasons before. And he's obviously, as I say now, he's fitter and stronger. And he's just an absolutely joy to watch. Socks down straight away, puts his foot in. Yeah, I love him. I think he's brilliant.
He was showing off a little bit as well, like the box of tricks out.
Yeah. Well, you would do against Man United if you're 9-0 up on aggregate. I mean, sometimes you just got to give it to them, haven't you? Because they would have done it the other way around. But you know what? I thought the other thing about last night as well was how good the crowd were with the Ronaldo thing. And then what I thought was absolutely fab after the applause, they sang "You'll Never Walk Alone," and I think they sang that to Ronaldo. It wasn't the case, this is
totally.
Liverpool. Yeah, totally. So, and the atmosphere was absolutely fab. It was a bit kind of bear baiting at times, but I mean, Manchester United, God knows where they're going to go. I really seriously don't know. And whether Ten Hag or whether he's actually going to come, I'm not sure. The more he's seen of them, he must think, oh my God, what I'm going to let myself into or in for.
Dan,
we have a goal.
Mark Lawrenson jinxed it.
They got to 54 minutes, but Riyad Mahrez has scored for Man City, so they're 1-0 up. So I suppose Brighton are just going to have to, I don't know. I don't think they're a park. I mean, in fairness, they're not a park to bust team. They're just they're good at defending, but they have a threat, so they're just going to have to push it out now.
They need to get a shot in now.
Yeah,
they need to shoot now.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, Dan, what the odds are scoring goals after 90 plus minutes.
They are actually, yeah. They've had a couple in recent weeks, haven't they? So the Spurs game, of course.
Loads.
Yeah. So.
I agree with you. I'm glad you mentioned the Ronaldo gesture. I thought it was fantastic because there's always the worry that morons might try and do something very silly there, and they didn't. And it was more than just a tepid round of applause or not everyone applauding. It was a really genuine, widespread round of applause. And then "You'll Never Walk Alone" is the perfect song for a moment like that. I just thought it was fantastic,
The other thing is, well, you'll know anyway, but we know what Liverpool fans have been through, don't we? Heysel and Hillsborough. and all those kind of things. So they absolutely, totally got it. I mean, I was in the posh seats as well. My mate's got a box, but everybody, even in the posh seats, everybody stood up. Everybody applauded and everybody sung the song. You had some guests in it who were actually Norwich City fans, these 4 people, business people and stuff, and they were just saying throughout the game, we have never, ever, ever witnessed or seen anything like this, because obviously dear old Norwich is, it's good in its own way, but it's that the atmosphere last night was, we've seen many fantastic European nights, fortunately played in 1 or 2 of them, and that was as good as anything. Really seriously was.
Quite an interesting period just after half-time where I don't know, was it down to United's change in formation, or, as Paul Scholes said on the TV coverage he was part of, Liverpool just got a bit bored. But regardless, there was a moment certainly where Van Dijk was too casual early on, and the TV cameras, so you were at the game, you mightn't have been seeing it all on TV, or maybe you were inside in the posh seats actually finishing off the buffet and watching it on TV.
BA stuff. Listen, by the way, start of the second half, I was the only one outside. There was still stuff in the faces inside.
Well, I'll tell you what the Norwich folk were seeing. They would have seen Andy Robertson, after Van Dijk was very casual, he was like applauding, but in an aggressive way, as if to say, wake up, man, we're not going to let this slip in any kind of silly way.
He's Dutch.
Well, everyone had sort of slipped a touch, and it was very fitting then. It was Robertson who pounced on that very straight pass and initiated Liverpool's 3rd goal. And again, for the 1,000,000th time, we're saying the same things over and over again, but I did think to myself, he is just a phenomenal player, Andy Robson. He had a bit of a low patch, I thought, at a point this season. His crossing wasn't as good, or he wasn't maybe peak of his powers, but he's back. Wherever he was, he's back.
Yeah, well, him and Trent against City away actually had a poor game. I mean, I know they made a goal, but defensively, those two were a little bit all over the place. And in that game, especially, Liverpool hadn't played a team like Manchester City for a long time. They've been, keep winning. I think they got a little bit of a shock, and certainly City did their homework, and the number of balls that they got in wide areas behind the fullbacks and also behind the 2 centre-backs was a little bit worrying, but obviously they kind of rolled with that and got that early equaliser. But yeah, he's just a mad Scotsman, isn't he, Andy Robertson? And I mean, the amount of running those two do, himself and Trent, is just amazing. I mean, if you look at the first goal, what the hell was Trent doing out on the right wing in Manchester United's half? I mean, him and Salah were holding hands, weren't they, when they were going through? So the great thing about it is that the manager loves it, doesn't he? And the thing also with him is he's prepared occasionally that they might concede because they are so good going forward. But why would you ever stop them going forward? And this whole thing with Southgate and Trent is just amazing. Obviously, Southgate doesn't think that Trent's defensively good enough. Oh, my goodness me. I mean, he'll win you games. I mean, his passing is just out of this world. It's like a midfield general. And actually, people say, why doesn't he play midfield? Well, that's completely different, because then, obviously, you're on the half turn and it's not the same. But the great thing for him is he comes onto the ball. Generally, there's nobody, not too many people in front of him. He's got time to bring the ball down, have a good look up. And as I say, his delivery is better than Robertson, but only just.
Who has a better right foot from open play, Beckham or Trent?
I'd have to go for Beckham, wouldn't you, at the moment? But I mean, how old's Trent? 22, 23, if that? I would have thought. But Beckham was magnificent. Or actually, you know what I should have answered?
Go on.
Thiago. Yeah. But look, it's just, and I know from being down at Kirby a few times at the training ground and stuff, and these lads, obviously, they train really hard under Klopp. They really do. They have a little bit of fun as well with it, but they train really hard. But they stay behind all the time, and it's just they just want to make themselves better. And the number of times last night people say to you, do you think they'll win the 4? Do you think they'll do this? Do you think they'll do that? And I don't think at all they think about that. And I know Klopp wouldn't have any of it in the dressing room, but you will have a little sly think, right, wow, we could actually be the first team ever. And the great thing at the moment is I think everybody's fit. Everybody that he needs to be fit is fit. Competition for places. 5 strikers. Umpteen midfield players. Canati, obviously, who's come every game. He's improving all the time, and he's suddenly developed a nice taste for scoring as well. And everything's great, but it's football, and you just never ever know, do we? Just maybe if Alisson got injured or Van Dijk, or please God, but hey, they're just going to keep going. And the great thing is, and Dan will know this as well, is that if you keep winning, you could play every single day. And by the way, it's a million times better than training.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard question. It even seems like, and you would know this from going regularly, that they're almost even more exciting to watch now than the league-winning team of 2 seasons ago. It feels like now. I don't know. Is that because there was the burden of pressure a couple of years ago to get across that line, but it just feels like it's even more, I don't know, expansive or explosive now. I don't know. Is that your sense of it at all?
Well, yeah, I have. And I mean, Klopp said this is the best squad and team he's had. I mean, just as I say, the five players for the 3 forward positions. And I mean, every week, about an hour and a half before the teams come out, we're all playing the guessing game. Who's he going to play? I mean, the Diaz fella. I mean, crikey, he's been unbelievable. I mean, he's hardly been. I don't know how long he's been there, but it feels like ages. But I know that it's not. But he's just taken to it like a duck to water. And the great thing about him, and why the punters love him, is not the fact that he scores and he goes past people. But if he gets tackled, he'll come back and whack somebody himself. He's a tough little so and so. And those kind of Colombian players. I mean, people say he reminds everybody about with Suarez and stuff like that. And I get it. Because Suarez was basically brought up by his auntie and his uncle, but late was in the streets more than ever. And this fella's a little bit of a street fighter, and there's nothing of him. When you stand up next to him, he's actually skin and bone. But I mean, the signing of him has just been magnificent when you think about it. And I mean, I go on about this all the time, but the recruitment of the players at the football club has been nothing short of fantastic. And the number of players that they bought in between the 30 and 40 million bracket who are good players, but Liverpool are making them into absolutely outstanding players. And 30, 40 million now is not a lot of money. So the recruitment side of that team, well, there you go. Look at Man United's recruitment and look at Liverpool's recruitment. So as the United manager said last night, that they are 6 years behind Liverpool. And he's absolutely right. So.
And even the old guards are still doing it. I mean, Salah, amazing again. And Mane, who I think it was mentioned even on the TV commentary last night, and it was worth mentioning. Starts off on the right, Salah comes, moves over to the left. Now he's playing through the middle. And like the pass for Salah's goal, I'd have to listen to it back, but I'd say the whole stadium was caught by it. I was caught by it. Like, it was amazing. The vision, and even Salah afterwards kind of joked, but I don't even think he was joking. I think he said afterwards, I wasn't expecting him to play it. He made the run. He made the run, but he didn't know if he'd been seen, and geez, it was just fantastic. Yeah,
well, listen, but I think what's happening is that competition for places with those 5 is just spurring them on. And didn't the front 3 all score and assist last night? I think that's right. So, they'll be getting kick out the fact that they're making goals for the striking partners as well, which is always good. So then you've got another competition within a competition, which is great. So, long may it continue.
Didn't want to fall into the very easy trap of starting with Manchester United. So Liverpool are in a wonderful place, and the remainder of the season is going to be just fascinating. It's hard to know what to say about United. They for the first half in particular, and really for most of the game, they were beyond abysmal. And it was also the most predictable abysmal you could ever have predicted. In terms of predictions in a game between Liverpool and Manchester United, this was the most predictably awful performance there's ever been.
Well, they couldn't get out. That was the first thing. I mean, they got out once in the first half when Rashford, whose touch wasn't great, which isn't a surprise because he's not been great for a long, long time. But that was the only time, really, that they managed to get out of their own half. And, I mean, Pogba, was he injured? I'm not quite sure, but he he kind of limped off, and then when he got past the touchline, I'm sure I saw him jogging up the tunnel to the bath. But I mean, you can't. I feel a bit sorry for Ranier because he was always going to take the job, and why wouldn't you? And he knew it's just temporary. But once you put somebody in charge like that, maybe for 2 or 3 weeks while you're trying to sign a manager, we get that. But you can't say he's going to be there for 5 or 6 months, because straight away the players who don't play in the dressing room, they're all, well, stuff him because he's going in May and I've got a contract and I'm all right, Jack. And that, that's the biggest problem for me, because we know the dressing room's not right, but that's, for me, the main reason, because they're not pulling in the same way. We used to say at Liverpool, it's no good having 16 teas and 1 coffee. And that's just the way that they are. And then obviously, Ronaldo's a personality in himself. He's got 15 goals for them, but obviously, you have to fit him in because he gets the goals, but he doesn't help the way that they play. And in fact, if you just look at Manchester United, how do they play? We don't know. I can't remember one game this season, and I've seen loads of them, where they've played for 90 minutes. And it's bizarre. It really is bizarre. And you kind of, do we think they're fit enough? Do we think they're strong enough? I mean, the young kid who came on and had a kick at 1 or 2, and I heard Ger and Eoin saying, and I get what he's saying, is at least they came on and thought, come on then, this is Man United Liverpool. I've never ever seen a Man United team that didn't tackle in a game against Liverpool, no matter whether they're top, bottom, or in the middle. And it was embarrassing, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, at half-time, it was looking very worrying, and they rallied a touch, but only a touch.
Yeah, it's. Yeah. I mean, I know, and you're in the ground, Laura. That first goal, I know you can pause. You can pause any goal maybe at a point in time, and you can find a flaw in it. But I mean, their defensive line is sort of all over the place, and is that sort of something that's very obvious in the ground just watching it? It's like, well, what actually is, as you said, like, what are they trying to do here? Because it just seemed like they were conceding all different types of goals as well. It wasn't just one type of goal. They seemed to be vulnerable in a number of areas, which in fairness, I mean, it has to come back to some degree of organisation from management too.
Yeah. I mean, I think they changed it at half-time, didn't they?
Mm.
And obviously took Jones off. Well, that was always going to be a problem because he hadn't really played. I felt a bit sorry for him because he didn't really know where he was playing, in all honesty. And I bet when they named the team, he must have thought, did he actually say my name? But that's where they are, and it's not. People say they didn't try, they didn't do this, they didn't do whatever. They just actually don't know what they're doing. They've got talent, there's no doubt about that, and that makes it worse. But they don't know what they're doing. I mean, you just watching them, and I was on the halfway line where I was sat and everything, and sometimes I just watched them without the ball, and they just didn't know, and they didn't try and push up, and consequently they couldn't get out their own half. They couldn't get any of the ball anyway. But they never really had a sequence of passing in Liverpool's half. I mean, one of the goals Liverpool scored, it was umpteen passes and everything. But Manchester United were maybe 2-3 passes at the most in Liverpool's half. And then, of course, because of the way that Liverpool pressed, it kept pinching the ball back off them. And I don't know, it did feel a little bit. I actually felt sorry for them, thinking, imagine playing in that team. You think, what the hell's happening here? It's a real difficult one. And he changed it, Ranić, at half time, and rightly so. But it improved it a little bit. But as we discussed before, I think Liverpool just having a bit of a breather then before they kicked on again.
Yeah, it's falling apart. They're pushing for fourth, but really they all want the season to be over. It's gone 2-0 between Manchester City and Brighton. Phil Foden has scored. Did you hear that, by the way, Dan, as well? Posh seats number 1 on the halfway line.
Yeah.
He just dropped that in there. This is how the other half live.
Boys, if you're going to do it properly.
Correct. Can I ask you one last question? I your centre half hat.
It seems to me that Harry Maguire is perfecting the art of stepping into no man's land. So I'm thinking in particular of that first goal where Dallow is sucked up the left-hand side, and you mentioned Trent Alexander-Arnold and Salah are running from deep. This would be a fairly routine pattern, I would think, in professional football. Suck a defender out and run in behind. And so ball goes into Mane's feet. And at that stage, you're praying that Maguire retreats and goes with the runners and lets Mane have it on the halfway line. Or if he's going to go with Mane, smash him, foul him, don't let him play the pass. And he steps with Mane, but is 10 yards away from him, and Mane slips the pass around the corner and they're gone. And then he did it again for the fourth goal. Okay, he gave a terrible pass, and that's not great. But again, at that crucial decision-making moment that you would have been in 1,000 times, where you can either gamble or you can be a bit conservative and stay in the play as long as possible. Again, he does neither and steps into no man's land. And I'm just thinking, surely he didn't do that 5 years ago.
No, he didn't. His head's all over the place. Absolutely, his head's all over the place. But I mean, the bottom line is that, you know, if you're in that position and you're not playing well, just pretend you're a pessimist. I mean, you just got to, at the very least, if you retreat, you're buying yourself a chance of maybe sometime getting a tackle in, or even stopping somebody illegally. But his head's full of mush. As they all are. I mean, just Dallow and Wan-Bissaka and all that. I mean, the lot of them just looked like they met in the pub and just said, well, you play there, and we'll see how it goes. And I mean, that's a little bit over dramatic, but they were just the decision making of the whole team last night was really, really poor. And I mean, the best player of Manchester United this season is a goalkeeper. He's been head and shoulders above anybody. I mean, he wasn't particularly great last night, but generally he's been by far the best player. He's kept them in so many games. It's frightening. And I feel a bit sorry for Harry Maguire as well. I mean, you know, England fans all coated him and all those kind of things and stuff. But he's suddenly become a bad player. But he's not a bad player when when he's got his head together. He's just got a little bit of a lack of pace. And by the way, you do not want to face those front three if you're not quick, because you'll need 5 yard start at least.
Thank you so much for the time. Much appreciated, Mark.
No worries.
Mark Lawrenson with us there, giving us his thoughts on Liverpool 4, Manchester United 0.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor.